have I left out? Cherries, tart and sweet. So, who wants to be first? Come up and take a look. Remember, I said that one of these individual shoots has a disease on it, and that's a disease on that particular plant. It's a problem. Now, if you'll notice, some of them are starting to, the little scale leaves that cover the bud are beginning to open up, and you can begin to see a little color on some of these. Now, there's one in here that's kind of a low-chilling plum cot. Now, that sounds pretty easy, plum cot. So it's got to be a cross between a plum and an apricot. What's a pluri?
Plum and a cherry.
P-L-U. What starts with a P-L?
Plum.
That's right.
Plum and a
What
cherry.
ends with an airy?
Cherry.
Cherry.
That
Now,
sounds-
years ago, when I was a student, they told us that among the stone fruit group, they're incompatible. So you can't cross a cherry with a peach, and you can't cross an apricot with a plum. And I guess they got tired of listening to that. And Dave Wilson, the biggest wholesale nursery in the country out of California, supplies some of our plants now. And they have a system, they've made all these crosses that heretofore, the science said you couldn't do it. But when you bud or graft, and the reason I'm pointing this out, bud or graft, what you're looking at today, generally except for one plant, requires rootstocks. And a rootstock, remember what I just said? This is the rootstock for apple, one of them, right here. We slap a bud on this, we force that bud to grow, and we cut the top off, and we've got a two-part plant. That's not true for one of these tree fruits. Anybody want to guess what? Now you can grow any of these from cuttings. Okay? The problem is a cutting plant doesn't have a lot of resistance to certain soil-borne diseases. So, and if it were in citrus, the rootstock I use imparts cold hardiness to the scion. We call the bud the scion, S-C-I-O-N or C-I-O-N. You'll see it in the literature both ways. But there are things called incompatibilities. Now, if we're talking about humans, that would be an individual or two individuals that don't get along very well. With tree fruit, this tree, I cut this off this tree, and that tree is 12 years old. So it's grown as a rootstock down here, and this is a scion portion that produces the big, nice fruit. That is probably the best way to look at it is there's nothing wrong with this tree. Commonly, where they're budded, you will see, when you walk out this building, look at the trees to the left and the right. Those are pear trees, hard pears. They have a level of incompatibility. The scion portion wants to outgrow the root portion. So you have a little root and a big scion right where they were budded. However, they do tolerate each other, and they do get along, and you can have them for 20 to 25 years. So if they're incompatible after 25 years, I'm not worried about it. Most of the tree fruits plus is that they live longer in many cases than certain other fruit plants. A strawberry, for example. How many years are you going to get out of a strawberry?
About 3.
3 would be real good. Today, in today's world, you get 1. because they put them on black plastic. They fruit them, then they cut them out. Start again. Big difference. Or south of us or north of us. And it gives you some definitive information about varieties and so forth. So there's what you're going to get this morning from me is a 15-week lecture for tree fruit. This is what you would get if you were at the university. And we're going to hit the high points and the things that I think would make a difference if you have an interest in growing tree fruit. For those of you who do not have the slightest idea who I am, my name is Arlie Powell. Arlie like Charlie without the CH on Charlie. And there is an Arlie, Alabama, but it's A-R-L-E-Y. My background is I'm a pomologist, that's a fruit scientist, and I have worked at Texas A&M University, University of Georgia, University of Florida, and retired here at Auburn. So I've had a chance to work with most all the fruit that's grown in the area, and I've done consulting work in Guatemala and other places in the world. So I don't mind questions, but when you see me start on something, kind of find some point in between when you think it's a good point to ask a question. There aren't any dumb questions when it comes to this type of meeting. Any question is certainly worthwhile, because when you ask it, probably 5 other people or 10 other people side of you have the same thing in mind. Okay. How many of you are north of Birmingham? Any of you? All right. How many of you are south of Montgomery? All right. Any of you out of state? Very good. We commonly have a few of our out-of-state visitors, and we welcome them very much. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Jason, my son, has started this nursery and farm about 25 years ago. Gosh, it doesn't seem like that. But the fruit part of this is that we have about 145 varieties of fruit plants, close to 100 varieties of tree fruit, about 40 to 50 varieties of small fruit. And I've spent a lot of my time evaluating a lot of these. So if it's a raunchy variety, I'm going to tell you that that's exactly what it is. And if you want to grow something very difficult, I'll tell you what, if you want to try something. And I can tell you what's easy to grow. But you know, if you want to be a gardener with tree fruit, the first thing you want to do is decide on what you want to eat and when you want to eat it. It's just that simple. Because some things are more difficult to grow than others. There's some cheers right over there. Just go right ahead. You bet.
Thank you.
Most tree fruit take longer to grow. What is the biggest tree fruit you can think of now that you can grow as a dwarf? Which?
Mandarins?
You can grow, we have mandarins, yes. Mandarins, and we, I'm glad you mentioned that. Next month, I do a persimmon, Oriental persimmon and citrus session, just like we're doing today. And we'll go through the orangery over here and show you some pointers and so forth and so forth. And Jason, did you have a point or two you wanted to make?
Yes, and then with mine. Good morning. Thank y'all so much for coming today. We have got a gorgeous day, and I appreciate you spending a Saturday morning with us. His dad already asked, is anybody's first time to come to the nursery? Awesome. Good. For the first timers, I'll just give you a brief review and then a couple of housekeeping notes, and then I'll be quiet. You are in for a treat today. Dad's about to put a semester's worth of information into an hour and a half period for sure. But you're gonna walk away, I think, very excited. Whether you've got existing fruit trees or whether you're getting ready to add them to it, you're going to find something that's going to be of great use for you from this class. My name's Jason Powell, and this is my dad, Dr. Arlie Powell. And I began the nursery at the best time you can start any business, right out of school. When you're so young and dumb, you don't know what to be afraid of, right? You just go in there, and then thankfully, with a good backstop of my dad to tell me what I did wrong and what I need to do right, we've grown. And in 30 years, we are going into this year. So June of this year will mark our 30th year, and our whole goal is to approach gardening from an educational standpoint. We make two efforts to achieve that goal. First, we plant everything that we grow in a garden setting. What Dad would love for you to be able to see is this pear in the landscape where it's been for 15 to 20 years, so that you can see how big it gets, how large a space you need to allow for it, and so on. Then we host workshops and classes. Our second effort at achieving an educational goal is what we're doing today. We'd like to host workshops and classes so that you can learn like we are from what's going on, what's happening in the landscape out there for sure. So when we host workshops and classes, as you obviously know, we've got the list on our website, and so you can put in there for participation what you would like. We do have a caterer that works with us on lunches. So generally, if we can hear from you by Thursday, we can have a lunch. You can sign up, pay for it online, and then it'll be ready. At noon, Sue Whitfield will be in the kitchen, so if you did order lunch today, she'll be able to get you all taken care of with that and get you all squared away. And then Dad's program will go right up for the inside portion, right up until noon, and then Dad, did you want to do a break for...
With this size group, I would say I'll shut it off at noon, and then we'll try to get back together about 1.
About 1 p.m. we would start on that second portion, but we'll meet in here and then watch the weather, make sure of what it's going to do, and then that portion would include some pruning demonstrations for sure. So that gives you a little bit of background about what we're doing. I'm very thankful. I've got a great crew here with us today. So as you get your questions answered, if you break away and you want to look at trees, or you have additional questions about other things, we got a great crew here today, and we'll be glad to kind of tackle whatever you might have an interest in. But I want to thank you again so much for coming today. You were in for a big treat. I'm very thankful to have my dad involved as my full-time partner. He's been my dad for 50 plus years, but my full-time partner for 30 years, and has helped us to grow. And no surprise to you, the edible aspect of gardening is huge. And the interest that we see, as you are an example of, is in this edible aspect. We are so thankful that you have an interest. And this is what Dad spent his career doing, teaching, demonstrating, and succeeding in. So thank you all so much for coming. And Dad, I will be quiet and get out of your way, for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Before we really get into the meat of this, has anybody got a question? A burning question?
I have a small one. Your pear trees or whatever fruit trees by the road and out here, I've been here many times before, and y'all train them on wires instead of letting them get really tall and big. Is there a reason I should do that at home, or why y'all do that here?
All right, let me give you 60 seconds of an answer. Those trees were planted in 2000. This is 2024. They're entering their 24th year. We've lost some of them. That's quite common with apples. After about 20 years, you'll start losing a few. We have a number of diseases in the south. We have a lot of rain, so we can't control that. But what it does, when they go out, it allows me to bring in a brand new variety that hasn't been explored in this area. And that's what we're in motion constantly doing just that. We've changed though. This is what was in the 1950s and 60s. 3 wires and plants with branches, big long branches on the bottom, in the middle, a little bit shorter branches, and then up top, just like a Christmas tree, just like that. Well, what they found out, and I found out, and we mulch ours, is if I put 4 to 6 inches of mulch up there, the branches on those apple trees swag to the ground when they load down. I can't control the diseases when fruit's touching the soil, and that's not a good way to grow them anyway. So what we've done is today, if it doesn't rain us out, and if it does, I'll show you with my other program here, some DVDs and so forth. But the pear trees I'm going to show you, those pear trees can produce 200 to 300 pounds of fruit, one tree. Of course, that means you got to fruit it. But what we've done, instead of 2 feet, a 2-foot wire, a 4-foot wire, and a 6-foot wire, we now are at a 3-foot wire, a 5-foot wire, and a 7-foot wire, and I let them go 1 to 2 feet above the top wire. So that means the top of that tree is 8 to 9 feet. And you'll see some today that we're fixing to prune. And our pruning, we time pruning when it's the least lethal problem to the tree. You don't want to prune September, October, November. Those are terrible times. You set up your plants for susceptibility to a number of diseases. But when you hit the last part of January, 1st of February, this is ideal pruning time. All you have to do is don't prune right in front of a hard freeze, because that tree will suffer immensely, both with the fruit buds and with the tree itself. Big, big difference.
But at home, having a big, full tree, letting it grow like they normally do is okay. The only reason I would want to do that at my house maybe would be so I could reach the fruit better.
Absolutely. And you can spray it easier. It's
Okay.
easier to
That's
manage.
easier to manage. That's
The whole apple industry in the United States has moved to trees. Some of them, they plant them 3 and 4 feet apart. You would think it was a nursery row, growing nursery plants. And they use a slender spindle, a French axe. They use a single trunk going up with little branches like this. They only produce 30 to 50 fruit per tree. The old standard tree would produce 500 to 600 fruit. So, do you want a big, big tree? Does that add to your landscape? Does it add? If you're willing, keep this in mind on pruning. If you prune from the ground, you can pick from the ground. If you prune from a ladder, you'll pick from a ladder. Very, very simple. Does that answer most of what you're... There's nothing wrong with a big tree, if that's what you want. It is more difficult to harvest, more difficult to spray, and so forth and so forth. All right. What I'm going to do today is what a faculty member would find absolutely impossible to do in an hour to an hour and a half, and that is cover all the tree fruit that you can grow in this area. So lined up on this table here, I start with one end and work my way to the other end. Now, did anybody figure out which tree fruit is grown from cuttings?
Fig.
That's right, exactly. Absolutely.
That's the only one?
That's the only, now, remember what I said. I can grow any of these from cuttings, but if I do that, I don't have a rootstock that gives me extra protection from diseases and other things. So I prefer to put them on a rootstock. And Geneva, where would you think this rootstock would come from if you know the U.S. pretty well? Where is Geneva? Well, that's correct, it is, but that's in Alabama. Geneva, New York. Cornell University has produced a whole realm of new dwarfing, semi-dwarfing rootstocks for apples. We don't have, now we have used forever Emila 106, Emila 7. Those are English. They were brought in here out of England. And the English have done a lot of work on dwarfing apples. But we still don't have much in the way of dwarfing on pears. We don't have much Yet, we've got some promises out there, some of the research ongoing now on peaches and plums. Now, you can buy online, if you want to, Bonanza dwarf peach, and it'll get about this high. And you can get about 10 fruit on it. Because the internode is a distance between buds. Okay, this is a bud, this is a growth site, this is another one. That's almost 2 inches. That's internodal distance. On a dwarf peach, it's the genetic dwarf. These things are right together. I mean, unbelievable. They're about like this one that I was going to ask you if anybody got this one that was forcing. Anybody want to make a guess as to what it is?
Cherry.
This is a spring sap. It's a plum cone. But the thing I want you to notice is we've just received 900 hours of chilling at this location. 900 hours. Normally, 20, 30 years ago, we would have 1,200 hours. Over the last 30 to 40 years, the whole U.S. and the rest of the world has lost chilling during the wintertime. So I would tell you to plant a 1,000-hour peach variety normally in this area. Today, no way. I don't plant anything above about a 900, and preferably, if you're commercial, you don't plant anything above about an 850, because that's about the chilling you can get. Now, we've got some growth regulators. We can spray on a tree, and the tree thinks it just received 300 hours of chilling, but they cost a lot of money, and they're more arduous to work with, so it's better if you get natural chilling. And I have an assistant that has gone out, and I've got with her on the varieties, and we collect budwood every year, and we keep it in our cooler. And if when I cut it, it doesn't quite have the chill requirements satisfied on the buds, and it's the buds that we're worried about here. We're not worried about the bark, it's the bud site. If you took any of this apple here, and put it in a bucket, and put it in our cooler, and we kept the temperature in that cooler above 40 degrees, it would start callousing. It would start bud movement. You have to drop the temperature below 40 degrees before that plant will no longer start growing. Now, plants that you see right here, all of these plants are multifunctional. And people say, well, I see pears in September flowering. That's because the buds have not gone into rest. Once the bud goes into a rest period, which is normally in late September, October, early November, once it's into that rest period, you can't bring them out without chilling temperatures. That's the difference. So you'll see those pear trees in late August and September. You'll see some of the Japanese cherry trees. In August, there's not a leaf left on them. They drop all their leaves. And sometimes if you get rain patterns just right, once they drop those leaves, those buds are ready to grow. So if you keep pushing them, you can expend all your flower crop in the fall rather than in the spring. But what's important here is to understand that, number one, 30 years ago, you could plant anything. You could almost cut wood off anybody's tree. In today's world, Washington State is a good example. When you go in the store to buy apples that come from Washington State, we can't grow those. I cannot bud a tree and sell it to you because they totally control, and they can do this legally, they totally control that variety. They produced it, and they're not going to let you grow it. And there are some operations now that to grow that variety, you have to be a member of a club. And then they market the fruit for you, and you get paid that way. Now, how does that affect the gardener? It means the gardener is left out. Years ago, when we didn't have everything patented in the way of fruit plants, you could grow anything. And today, anything I cross, and I've got a kiwi up here that I'm going to release, and I will hold a patent on it, and I can control what I'm going to do. I've got some other crosses I've made, and I may do the same thing on those, but it takes a lot of money. One patent, if you wanted to patent a plant at your house, would cost you $10,000 just to start. And then every year, you pay a license fee. If you don't pay it every year, you lose it. You've lost your patent. So what I'm saying is the world of growing fruit is not quite as simple as it used to be. You just can't grab something and take a bud off of it and off to the go. The trees down here, any of you have mulberries? Anybody got a mulberry? Well, you know there's some native mulberries around that are fairly decent. This is the weeping tea. You see how that's what a lot of the apple plantings look like. They look just like that tree with the branch coming down. If I arch this branch down, I can make it fruit 1 to 2 years quicker. If I bring it up like this, I can keep it from fruiting 1 to 2 years quicker. So the orientation of the branches has a lot to do with that. And we've done some research here at Thorsby, at our Research Extension Center. And we've got a block of Aztec Fujis, which are quite nice. They just won't color the way we would like them. But as an example here, I couldn't leave the nut trees out. This is an ambassador. This is a Carpathian walnut. It's called ambassador. And the only reason we bring it in is people ask for walnuts. We're not trying to get in the walnut business, but if they're beautiful trees, and this one's self-fruitful. You don't have to have two, and that's a plus. We have pecans that we also have, and these are type 1, type 2. The pecan is dioecious, and the male flowers and the female flowers frequently simply do not open. They're not active at the same time. So you put a type 1 early flower type pecan with a type 2, which is a late flowering, and it makes all the difference in the world. This is what the commercial grower wants. These are feathers. That's what they're called. This is look at that. That's great. That's a well feathered tree. Now, I'm not going to keep all those branches, but initially, if I wanted to, when this was planted, what the commercial growers would do would be bend them down like this and tie them with a trunk. That's going to make this one fruit, or these branches fruit early. But no branch on that tree stays on there older than 2 years. If it's starting to be 3 years old, it's cut off. They only fruit those young. That's the difference in commercial growers and what you might do in your garden. But this one, see, it's tried to lean, so all you have to do is straighten it back up. Go to a straight shoot, and it's very easy. Now, when you prune, always prune on a slant. Don't prune flat like this. First of all, it's harder for you to make that cut. If you angle your tool like this, you can cut it much easier. Now, if you go out in the dead of winter, in late December and January, and try to prune, you're cutting wood that's hard as lighter knots, as we would say. But if you wait, and you can tell, I can tell right now, Gosh almighty, that cuts so easy. This one's got activity in it. Now, you can't see it yet. The buds aren't quite that far along. But that's, and this one, as I recall, this is one that some people like, and it's called an Indian free peach. It's an antique, but it is absolutely beautiful when you eat it. It's got red all in the flesh, and it's quite good, and it's a freestone. And the terminology is part of what is a little confusing. Any of you ever used a guard for your tree? I started this one, and you can just keep wrapping it around and wrapping it around just like that. And you don't have to have them. It does protect it against some insects maybe, but it protects it against herbicides when you spray and you're not hitting this young tree. And some people use this, some don't. And some use much shorter ones, maybe only 2 feet. But anyway, those are, if you open up the magazine of companies that sell all these garden products, they've got a whole line of different type of trunk protectors in there. Sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. This is, you see what's happened here with these branches? This is our pollinator. This is Dorset Golden. Now, any of you live all the way down toward Baldwin County, Mobile, anywhere down there? That's a 200-hour variety. Now, Israel's at war right now, but Israel produces some nice plants. And this is Dorset Golden, which pollinates Anna. And Anna is this one. And you can see it almost looks like incompatibility of where your rootstock joins the sign portion, but that's just common. You look at any of these plants, you can see where the original rootstock was simply cut off once that plant became big enough. And all of these, and they all have what growers call a dog leg. That is, they start like this, and they just go around, but then it looks like that one's a little crooked. After about 3 years, you'd never know that there was a crook in it. And look at some of these. We dwarf apples because it's easier to manage them. With peaches, we don't yet have a dwarfing rootstock, although research-wise there's some promise there. On peaches, we simply put them on a plum, or put a plum on a peach. Remember I said compatibility? It's common for the Tennessee nurseries that grow most of the peach trees that are sold in this area, for them to simply buy seed. They plant the seed in October. It goes through the winter. It's naturally stratified, that is, it receives cold hours. The seed have to have a cold treatment, about 100 hours worth, to make them germinate and grow. And then in the spring, they start breaking, and they grow rapidly. And then at the end of May and 1st of June, they bud them. And when they bud them, they produce a tree that looks just like this one right here. In other words, from this bud right here all the way up, this is a growth that tree made from the 1st of June until October when they harvested the tree. Now, if they leave it in the ground, it becomes a 2-year tree, and they can get a much bigger tree. But most commercial growers like these trees. Now, you want to guess why? Because they're a heck of a lot cheaper. And gardeners, it depends on the gardener. I've had a number of people tell me, hey, I don't know how long I'm gonna be around. I want something that's gonna grow fast and give me something now. Yes.
So, you say they grow their rooting stock from seed for those. Now,
That's correct.
okay, so now my question is, I've heard a lot about the root stocks being disease resistant and all of that kind of thing, and that's an advantage. Now, every seed is going to be a different thing, is that not correct? And how will they know if it's disease resistant or not?
That's true. But they bred, for example, Guardian rootstock for peaches. South Carolina, Clemson University, and USDA combined, and they bred that, and they totally control an entire acreage of nothing but trees that produce peaches from which they take the seed. And they've done that forever. Right now, even though it was patented a long time ago, and normally, say around 20 years, the patent expires. Now, they can always add something to it and get an extension on the patent and do a number of other things. Companies are pretty smart on their patents. They know how to lengthen them out. They do the same thing with medicine. But right now, that is the preferred rootstock until something changes. Now, but they've also got some common rootstocks that are just nothing but trees that someone found that look pretty good. One of them is Halford. One of them is Lovell. Lovell is nothing but a drying peach. It's a peach that they use for canning peaches in California. And the reason they don't use any more Loring or that one very much is simply because all the seed are bought up. So they tend to use the South Carolina source seed, and they've done that every year now for a long time, 20, 30 years. Now, with apples, we don't use seed. Totally different. They simply take a tree. Let's say this tree right here. They plant this tree in the ground. They let it grow up. And after it gets about 2-3 years, they simply whack it off. Then it starts producing a whole array of sprouts from down here. They take a mix of different soil materials and other materials and bank this tree. And it causes all these little sprouts. Let me show you, let's see, I have one here. Oh, here we go. See these little sprouts coming out of this tree right down at the bottom? They simply cover those up and they all root. And at the end of the season, they go in and they cut every one of those off. And that's the way they grow apples. So all the apple rootstock that we get in are rooted cuttings. But that's the way they get it. They don't take this like we would do with something else and root them in a greenhouse. They root them out in the field off of individual plants where they can control the diseases and other things that affect them. But with peaches, plums, they've been mostly handled. Mississippi State did research years ago to see if peaches that were on-rooted as rooted cuttings would do well, and they did fine. They just didn't have the disease resistance. They wouldn't live as long. So most people just work with budding trees. Now you can graft it. Budding means putting one bud into that bark, one. Grafting, I take the entire circumference of this and I attach that to the rootstock. Big difference. So graftage includes grafting and budding. And we commonly use budding because it's faster and it's easier. I use a hang bud, I use a chip bud, and today we have time. I'll show some of you how we do that. This is Cumberland Spur. It's the red delicious we've got out here, and you can see it's already trying to spur up on this tree right here. Here is a Yates. It's one of our best antiques. And this one was budded about somewhere between March and the 1st of May of last year. In other words, that's the growth that you get on one. But remember, these are on dwarfing rootstocks. If I put that on an apple seed, if I planted the apple seed, and that's what we used to do. They put them on seedling rootstocks, and a seedling apple tree will go to 40 to 50 feet. New York, the Apples of New York is a famous book, and in that book you can see trees that they grew back then. My goodness, some of them look like they're 60 feet tall. But when you put them on rootstock, you greatly diminish all that vigor, and you make the tree do more fruit production than growing branches. And that's another reason that's what we like on these. But these are this is a sellable tree right now. But if I keep this tree one more year, it would look like this one. And there's some reasons the pandemic messed up some of our growing at another site that we have here in the local area. And we're putting that one back in action because a lot of people buy landscape plants from us. And when they buy a big peach tree or a big apple tree or a big pear tree, they want one that's big. And they want it to fruit the next year or fruit that year. So that takes a special type of tree. But this is basically just examples of apple. Now, this is Olympic. An Olympic pear is what they call it out west. We call it Korean giant here. But it is the Asian pear. And I tell you what, if I were going to grow one tree in my garden, having done this now for about 20 to 25 years, an Asian pear, I can't grow Bartlett pear. Bartlett pear succumbs to fire blight too fast, too quick. You'll see the branches start going back. You'll see all the flowers just blighted, looking black. You can go with Asian pear, and we use Olympic, also Korean giants, called Korean giant. It's on your list. And then I use Shinko because they're self-incompatible. They're like apples. They're not self-fruitful. The only self-fruitful apples that are much self-fruitful are the crab apples. They tend to be more self-fruitful, but the standard apple is not. So you have to have two different varieties, and they need to flower at about the same time, which means they need to have similar chill requirements so that they come out in the spring about the same time. But this is Olympic, and I can tell you it is on Betchifolia rootstock. We also put them on Caleriana. Caleriana pear is the rootstock that some of you grow in your yard to have the pretty pears, the blooms in the spring, and have the beautiful color of the leaves in the fall. But we use it as a rootstock, and it is unbelievably vigorous. This is Shinko, and notice this one is more growth. This one right here is Hosui. Hosui, of them, I've got it because I can control a fire blight, and I've done quite well. You will see an occasional blighted branch on a Hosui, but after you eat the fruit, you'll know why people grow it. It is the first one. I can eat it in mid-July. And the others, I've got to wait till late July or early August. And they work fine then. But you notice this one, it's got pretty good vigor on the branches. Look at this one. It's spurring up. Spurring up means those little branches just produce a lot of small shoots. Most of those shoots are going to produce flower buds. This one right here will be totally covered in flowers. Yes.
We got 2 Asian pears at home, but they only fruit from like 6 foot down. What would cause that? I mean,
6 foot?
they like 30 foot tall, but they only fruit from 6, 7 foot to the ground. They don't fruit above that.
But they go all the way up
Yes, they like 30 foot tall.
and they do flower.
Yeah.
Your flowers are incompatible. That is, you don't have the right flower with that pear tree. Commonly on pears, fire blight can hit some of the pear trees that people buy, and it'll sprout from the base. And when it sprouts from the base, it's coming back from either Caleriana, the rootstock, or Betchifolia, the rootstock. And when those branches get up, and I see people in people's yards, they don't take them out. And they actually provide flowers to pollinate the rest of the tree. That's one way you can make a tree self-fruitful. I don't recommend that, but that's what happens sometimes. The post office here in Thorsby, I've watched them when I go to take my mail. They let fire blight take out one of those hard pears, then they put another one right in the same spot where that one died. When a tree dies, try to move it to a slightly different location if you can, if that's possible. Otherwise, used to, we had chemicals we could treat those replant areas with. And today we've got some chemicals, but they're generally not available to the gardener. I mean, there's some organic approaches, but they don't contain all the disease issues. But if you're on the interstate heading into Montgomery from here, look, give it about another month, maybe 2 to 4 weeks, and as you start dropping down from Prattville into the river floodplain, and as you approach Montgomery, look on both sides. The Caleriana pear has totally, it is, I don't know why they don't declare it as a disaster tree. And the birds are what moves them. They get the seeds out of the fruit. They eat the fruit, and they scatter them all over the place. And oh, they're beautiful. But a stand of those things, you would need a big tractor to pull them up or push them over. They'll take over an area. They're invasive.
Well, see, that's what made the top section I have the small.
They're small.
They're
All
small.
right, that's your rootstock. The rootstock on a Caleriana fruit is about that big. And it'll have, see, with pears and apples, you'll have 4 to 12 seed in that fruit. With a peach, you've only got one. You got one fruit. Well, you've got a pit, and inside that pit, you got a fruit. The one tree I didn't mention when I said stone fruit that we don't grow, and it flowers too early and it's going to freeze for most of you, is the almond. California has 1 million acres of almonds. They got more almonds than any other place on the surface of the earth. And it takes a lot of water for those almonds, and they have some problems convincing people that that's the best way, but they ship those all over the place. But in that case, the fruit is not edible. It's no good. They eat the seed. If you eat the seed on a peach, you'll get sick because it has certain toxins in it. That's the reason, but it's just the opposite for an almond, and unless you're just going to grow an almond for the beauty of it, we don't usually mess with them. Anyway, I put these up here for a good reason. Those 3 varieties I just mentioned to you, and I have worked with researchers, and I've worked on demonstration plots. Those are the best 3 available now. Now, in the future, somebody releases some other varieties, may add to that. But those 3 will get you past fire blight. But it doesn't mean you don't need to spray. When I spray our apples out here with streptomycin sulfate, I spray all the pears the same way. And that means I'm going to spray them. Just a very, very small container for garden. That means it's called fire blight spray for apples, pears, pyracantha, chrysanthemums, philodendrons and dieffenbachias and so forth and so forth. But it works quite well, and we use it. Although when I buy it in a larger quantity because as a commercial grower. But they now have some new products, some for organic producers that want to grow apples and what have you. That just and you can get them online, but they're on the expensive side. Now, what I do, I'll spray these apples out here with copper just before they start moving and they're getting close. So my copper spray is going to go on these apples and those pears, and it's going to go on there in about a week or two. This will burn flowers off of the tree. We're not trying to burn them. We're trying to knock the heck out of any fire blight that exists on the surface of the bark all throughout that tree. Once we clean it with copper, then we start with our streptomycin sulfate, and I'll put anywhere from 2 to 5 sprays, 4 to 5 days apart, depending on the rain. If it doesn't rain, you don't have to spray as much. But if you use that combination, and you use those pears and some of the apples I've mentioned, makes all the difference in the world. Anybody got a question on that? Yes.
So the spraying that you're talking about, you plan on doing it this time of the year?
Absolutely. I can tell you right now, with what mostly happens around here, that copper spray, and I've already sprayed it twice. I'll put copper on, it is an excellent material because it's a bactericide, it's a fungicide, it's multifunctional. And it cleans the tree. And I do the same thing. I use that same thing on my blueberries. I use the same thing on my blackberries.
So you're spraying that copper actually just on the tree itself even before it starts to leaf out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the peach growers have a disease called bacterial spot, and bacterial spot will defoliate that tree. Okay? They will start, gosh, at a 2 to 4 pound per 100 gallon rate. They'll start, they're already doing it now. But as the buds start moving, then they're going to cut that rate from 3 or 4 pounds to 2 pounds to 1 pound to a half pound. But they'll spray several times with copper. And it's because it's effective and it costs less money than everything else. Yes, did you have a question?
Do you, after you spray with the copper, do you use that other stuff that you mentioned? Do you do that with, if you spray your blueberries or in your pears and all, do you do that, you use that?
I don't commonly use streptomycin sulfate on my small fruit.
Okay, just
I
on
could,
the
I
trees.
could, but it's primarily, with us, it's primarily an apple pear spray. But we consistently spray them, and we do it every year, and that's the way we can make apples and pears. Now, you can skip, if you're not a spray person and you simply want to do what you can, those trees on the outside of this building are hard pears. Now, that Orient pear, it's about the size of a grapefruit, is nice, and I can eat them, but they won't match the Asian pears that we're talking about over here. But they're excellent for pear pies or anything that you're cooking. Those hard pears are the pears that people in this country used to use years back, and they'd store them under their house in cellars. And the darn thing, you could do all kinds of things with it, and they use them. They're still good today. That's Kefir and Orient, and not a thing wrong with it. But I've got another one I was going to, does that explain my point on those? If you get, now, the materials that were back there, that some of you got, and if you didn't get it, you just had to check with us and we'll make sure you do, if we have to mail you one, on the spray programs. Because I've got spray programs that have the chemicals, so that you know. And I tell you what, you know, when you're a specialist in a certain area, you sometimes forget not everybody has that same knowledge, and not everybody understands it quite like you do. But when you walk in a big box store, and I do this, and I look at the array of chemicals in there, I would think it would blow the average gardener's mind to look at what's there and what you should use. Now, I spent a career in extension. You can always get with the extension office. And in today's world, some of their publications, they'll let you download and you just make your copy off your computer. Some of them are already available as a publication. But smart growers will be successful with the fruits that we're talking about here. Does that answer your question? But and the other thing was, we put some of these together for you, and they're over in the building. This is the apple and pear cover bloom spray kit. Now, because you're fixing to leave the winter period and go into the spring period, copper is in here. And I just explained why we use copper. The other thing is, one of the finest for scab and a whole ton of other things, it's called F-stop. And it's microbutanil. I use it on my blackberries, I can use it on my blueberries, I use it on these apples and pears. It works great. So as you get into the spring period and things start moving with flowers and leaves, this one is one. What's the name of that again? I'm sorry, it's called F-stop. F-stop. Yeah. Now, there's, as you would guess, there's more than one company that makes garden chemicals. And this company, Fertilon, calls it F-stop. You'll find the same thing with other companies, but they put their name on it. But if you look, you'll notice that, and that's the reason the publications I put back there have that information in it. They'll give you the example companies and what they call their product. The other thing, I always use spreader sticker. So you say, well, I just use soap. You can. You can use Joy. You can use any. About a teaspoon per gallon is about the average amount you need. But the spreader sticker is probably a little bit better than just straight soap. Now, this one, Bonide put this one out. And I thought that they did several now. This one has lambda cyhalothrin, it has piclostrobilin, it has boscolid. It basically has some fantastic fungicides, and you really need those once you get to bloom time on pears and apples, and once you get past bloom and most of the bloom are gone and you've got the little fruit. This one is excellent because you've got one of the finest combined fungicides, and you've got lambda cyhalothrin is synthetic pyrethroid, and it's quite good. It's good on everything. It's good on roaches. It's good on you'll find in your house chemicals that you spray in your house. You'll see sometimes this is one of them. This has been around forever. Can't tell. It's called a multi-site material, and that means when a disease starts spreading on a leaf or on a fruit, Captan attacks different functions of that organism. It may knock out an enzyme. It may cause it not to reproduce anymore. It has all. That's the reason it's still here today. And until they take it away from us, it's a very, very good, it's a standard product. I use the fancy product here, and I use it with Captan, because Captan is darn good. And you don't want to use, the worst thing you can do now is to use the same chemical every time you spray. And we did that for a long time. And for example, if you take malathion over there, which has been around forever, and you mix it with Captan, that's the old standard peat spray. Everybody uses it every 2 weeks, they spray. Well, it still works, but you also need to include some of these others. And you notice, fertilized, I've already talked about it. It's a streptomycin sulfate. The citrus people in Florida had this approved for the greening disease. It's killing so many trees down there in the state. And then somebody decided that they could no longer approve that for spraying those, and I still have got to look up why they made that decision. But they were trying it because it's a bactericide. And suddenly they decided, no, you can't use it. Now, these are set up just so you can buy the whole package if that's what you want to do. Or otherwise, you can just get an individual chemical. I have a chemical cabinet in my garage. So all these pesticides, the one thing you always want to do is you want to put them up with a lock where you know where they are so that your children and other people can't get into them.
You said you keep them in your garage, I'm sorry, so
I keep them in my garage because my garage stays cool.
it stays cool. Okay, so yeah, you don't want to keep them where they're gonna get really hot.
No, you don't want them, and the liquids, you don't want to let them freeze, because if they freeze, most likely they have lost a lot of their potency. Yes?
Yes, sir. We have thought about planting some fruit trees in one of our pasture areas. We're also trying to think about how to manage the pasture. One chemical that was mentioned was Grazon, and I wasn't really sure how those types of herbicides affected fruit trees. If it's sprayed too close to them, that's what
That's a good question. They have certain approved herbicides for cattle to graze certain areas, but they use a timetable. They won't let them in there for a certain period of time, and then once they feel like it's safe, they let them back in. Let's see. This is weed and feed. This is we're approaching mid-February. About mid-April, we will put on a post-emerge application in our fruit here, all of our tree blocks. All the blueberries, all the blackberries. And that one is orzolan. And it's quite good, especially in plantings that have just started recently. And that simply prevents, as the weeds come up, it's going to kill them. It's not going to kill all of them because you got certain species that it will not take out. But if you had grass right around your tree, this is over-the-top grass killer. Now, you can get it in bigger quantities. But for the gardener, this is celoxidum. It's called Post if you were a commercial grower. And it will kill just the grass. Over here we got a strawberry planting. They can go into that strawberry planting and spray with this material, which is safe. And it'll kill the grass and the berries. Won't hurt the berries. Okay, this is the one that everybody seemingly has a question about, and that is, it makes me wonder with glyphosate, why they put that first one kills all, and now some people are beginning to collect because they got cancer. Well, you can die from taking too many aspirin. There's a lot of things in this world that will kill you. My gut feeling on this is we safely use it. That's all I can tell you. And whether you prefer not to use it, I fully understand. But
So is that like weed and feed? I'm sorry, not like Roundup?
this is Roundup.
Oh, it is, okay.
Bayer called it Roundup. Bayer was, no, Monsanto called it Roundup. They were bought out by the Bayer company in Germany. And now the Bayer company is having to handle all the problems that people have brought to them because they feel like it was a problem. We wear clothing. We don't get the stuff on us, and we don't drink it. So I feel like to the degree that we use it now, we do have some others, and we've got a second chemical that we started using. And I've gotten away totally from paraquat. Paraquat has been, it is fantastic. It'll burn the heck out of everything. But it's also too hazardous, and now if you try to use paraquat, oh my gosh, you've got to go through a training session to know exactly what to do in case of an emergency. I don't want any of that. So, but you can, I use 80 mLs. 80 mLs per gallon. That's 2 2/3 ounces of this per gallon. But if I was just going to kill annual grasses, I could use half that amount. If you just want to make your grass stop growing but not kill it, you can use even less of this. And some of the commercial growers do that. They'll mow it and they'll spray it, and it'll just sit there and sit there and sit there. And then gradually, after 6 months to a year, it'll start growing. But it saves them having to go back in there and mow it constantly. Anybody got another question?
Okay, what's the recommendation for like wild onions and creeping Charlie? Those are my two.
Wow, I wish you would ask some of these that I can't answer. Wild onions, the only way we're going to attack them is to eat them all.
So digging them up is the best way. There's so many.
I have a grandson, Jason's son, and I told him to get them out of some of our blueberry plantings and our blackberry plantings, that I would give him 50 cents per bunch. That was a bad mistake. Gosh, almighty. That kid got so smart, I could not understand him. He was bringing them in by the bagful. And I told him we were going to have to put a stop payment on some of that. But, you know, they're totally edible. You know the ones that are fixing to flower, some of them were flowering until we had the last freeze. It's got the little yellow flower. Yes, daffodils. They're edible. There's a lot of things out there that are edible. Now, this one, and I've tried it. This is burnout. This is citric acid and clove oil. It's basically an organic. And I'll tell you, it'll burn the heck out of you. And I've used it, but they're going to come right back. In other words, it doesn't put it, it'll make you feel good for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then you realize that you're going to have to do the same thing continually. Most of these fruit plants, in going over some of the essentials, there's not a one of these. I prefer apple and pears have a higher pH in the soil, 6.5 to 7. I can tolerate peaches at 6 to 6.5. That works pretty well. But for small things, the organic, people who want to use that, you can buy lime from any number of places, and we've got lime in bigger bags too. But lime will bring that pH up. The only ones we usually use sulfur on are blueberries, where we want a pH of about 4.5 to 5.5. The kefir, pear, outside you're going to see one's left, and most of those trees out there now are all orient, but they're hard pears. But those are the ones you want to plant if you don't want to spray them much. But even when we spray for fire blight, we do hit those trees. These two right here, Ayers pear. There's an Ayers pear tree right behind this building. And Warren pear, which was discovered at a USDA site in Mississippi when they abandoned it and quit doing research there, this one man wanted to go in and take a tree out of it, and he did. And they named it after him now, Warren. Now, what's good about this? If you want a European pear, one that you can put to your mouth and just push the fruit right into your mouth, you can't do that with an Asian pear. When you bite into an Asian pear, you're going to think you got one of these hard pears until you bite down the second time, and then the third time, and then it gets better with every bite. But with these, if you like the Bartlett type pear, it's so soft. Ayers is a smaller pear, beautifully, it's red. And Warren is fantastic. We got a picture of this one right here. These are European pears. Remember, hard pears, European pears, Asian pears. We don't grow Bartlett here because Bartlett succumbs to fire blight so bad. D'Anjou and all those others that you see out of Washington State and California, we're in the South, and fire blight will just wipe them out. So rather, if you want a European type, those are the best two we've found for this area. And they pollinate each other. Dave Wilson, remember I said early on, has started crossing all these stone fruit, and you got a pleury, and you got a plum cotton, and you got a whole bunch of different things. This is and I had mentioned Stella cherry, and I'm not sure if you use Stella, but people, if we go out today and it doesn't rain, we're going to walk right by two trees I want you to see that have died from bacterial canker that were our cherries, that were, that were cherries we put out there, because they now have some German rootstocks that do kind of dwarf a cherry tree. And that's kind of nice, because cherry trees make big trees. But this Stella cherry was famous because it was the first of the sweet cherries that was developed some years back that was sweet. Your sour cherries tend to be self-fruitful, but not the sweet cherries. The sweet cherries, you got to put cherry tree A with B, but B doesn't go with C, and C doesn't go with D. Anyway, Stella is self-fruitful. So if you want to try your hand at a sweet cherry, and it's dwarfish in growth habit, which helps some. But if you simply want a good cooking cherry, and I've worked with growers in North Alabama, and they grow and have grown Montmorency mostly, but Montmorency takes 1,000 hours of chilling. I don't push it here because you get to Birmingham and north, you can grow that one and it's self-fruitful, but this dwarf North Star is a cooking cherry. It's tart, and it's the best thing we've got if you want to try one. Now you've got Splash, Blue Ox Splash, and Plum Pot. This is a pleury. I keep pushing people, just try some of these. I've got a planting that I'm putting in this year of these others. These are the best. We started out with about 8 or 10 of these, and I've whittled it down to about 3 or 4 because I think we have a chance. Some of them are so low chilling that after getting 300 hours of chilling, they're in flower right now. Well, I don't want that. That means I've got to build a structure over it to protect it if I want to fruit it. But we do have some people in this state, they brought me fruit from theirs. And I guess if you try hard enough, you find one. But if you want to try something different, now this fruit is already in the stores. You'll see it every now and then. And spring satin, this afternoon, if it doesn't rain, I'll show you our spring satin tree. And the spring satin has already got activity in the buds. And it will be in bloom, and if it stays 70 degrees for the next several days, it'll be in bloom in a week. Now, plums, normally, I love Japanese plums. We've done research with them for years in this state, and the conclusion was, based on the current varieties, we can fruit them about 50% of the time. So if you're happy to maybe only get fruit 5 out of 10 years, that's pretty much where we still are. Although methley, I like methley. Methley is fantastic. What happened to my little, oh, there it is. Did y'all find this? Did you find the disease? Remember I said there was a disease up here? Here it is, right there, black knot. Black knot on plum. That's one of the worst diseases you're gonna get. It cracks open the bark, it cracks all the way down, and it gradually just shuts the flow of food off to the plant, and the branches die. And they'll die one by one by one. And if you don't cut them out, now I've got the trees out here you see today, those are about 10, 11 years old, but I have consistently pruned out affected branches, and I've done this, oh my goodness, once in the growing season and once right now in February and March. But if you do that, you can still control it, and it's not that bad. The main problem on plums is they tend to bloom too early and they get zapped. Now, if you don't mind building you a little frame over your plum tree, just keep in mind, except for methley, most of them are incompatible, so you have to have 2 varieties. Methley will fruit on its own. So if you wanted to try one, that's the one that I would suggest you try. Morris, when I was at Texas A&M years ago, Morris was one that they developed out there, and it's excellent, and it's half methley. So the Japanese plums have got great flavor. This is Morris here, just a young tree. This is Ozark Premier Plum. It's the biggest one that we've got, and it's multicolored. It's got some red, it's got some yellow, it's got some greenish brown on it, but it's quite good. This is methley, and this is one that I brought in out of Tennessee, and it's just been planted. So if some of you today were to happen to buy some of the trees that look like this, keep in mind, you want to grab it just like I'm grabbing this. You don't want to grab the tree because it's just been planted. And if when you plant it, all this stuff pours out, just put your tree in that hole and just pour this right in on top of it. And just level it nicely, and they will grow great. Now, if it's going to freeze Tuesday morning and you're in an area, the last I saw it said 32. I don't consider 32 real bad, but anything below 32 is bad. But just leave it in the pot until you can look ahead and you can see about 4 or 5 days without a hard freeze, then plant them. Now is a good time to plant. So, this is the famous peach, the most famous peach around the world. Anybody want to guess which one it is? You ever heard of Red Haven? Red Haven is famous worldwide as Alberta is in Georgia and Alabama. And a lot of people, I see people when they sell peaches, people, I think when they buy some, like to be able to express a knowledge of some of the varieties. So if you tell them this is Alberta, then the guy just grabs the same plant, walks over here and tells this guy, yep, it's Alberta, no doubt about it. In other words, what I'm telling you if you buy trees from certain places, you've got a 50% chance of getting one that's true to type. Now, that doesn't mean that every tree that you buy from here is exactly 100%. People make mistakes all the time with trees. But we go out of our way to make sure. And I provide the budwood. And I cut it to bud. So it's different. And we use Dave Wilson Nursery. I rely on that nursery tremendously because they're very good at what they do. But that's one of the problems when you select varieties, making sure that you got the right ones. But this Methley, this Red Haven peach. Now, this one, if you look at it, this one is already at first pink stage. First pink means I'm already at calyx red. That bud is already showing a lot of color. And that bud right there, it will open up in a week if it stays warm. Now, if it stays cool, it may be like that for 2 or 3 more weeks. And that's what we would prefer, that it stays like this. At this point, that bud, it'll take a good 20 to 22 degrees to kill it because they're tough. But once it gets bigger and bigger, and once it starts to open, 26 to 28 degrees will take them out. And that's one of your issues. That's the reason with certain blueberries I've got down here on Southern High Bush, we use freeze covers over them, and I add additional cover if I have to. Because once they get into that flowering stage and the young little fruit stage, that's when they're most susceptible to getting damaged. But Gulf King is about a 300-hour, 350-hour variety. That's the reason you see it breaking bud. But we get a few of these for people who are further south. Bella, Georgia. One thing about white peaches, if you've never grown white peaches, they're pretty tough. Georgia Belle is pretty darn tough. They'll come to freezes better than a lot of the yellow peaches. But Bella, Georgia, was originally out of Georgia, and it is an antique. And it works quite well. One of my favorites is Ruston Red. And Ruston Red is out of Louisiana. And the Ruston Red fruits beautifully. It's tough. It tends to come through much better than some of the others. But another one out of Louisiana called Harvester, it is fantastic. It's the first nice freestyle. Most of those early peaches, are cleans. But that one works fine. You got a couple of, this is Early Glow. Nectarine, Early Glow is excellent. It's a yellow nectarine. It's pretty cold hardy. Here's my favorite white nectarine. It's called Carla Rose. And Carla Rose is fantastic. I wish it were a little tougher against brown rock, but once you taste the fruit, and I tell people, just throw one fruit. Because these others can tolerate brown rock better than Carla Rose, but oh my goodness, once you've eaten the Carla Rose, that white nectarine, it's really, really hard to beat. But right now, if I had to rate one peach in this state, across all of the middle part of Alabama, the #1 peach would be July Prince, because it's the one that fruits more consistently than anything else. It's a good freestyle, fantastic. And keep in mind, remember, apples and pears are self-incompatible. You generally 2 varieties. Most of the plums, pretty much the same way, except Methley. When you get to peaches, all the peaches that you've got are self-fruitful. You can plant that one tree right by itself someplace, and it'll work great. Ending this thing, brown turkey fig. Here's one, if you haven't tried it. Tried some fruit off of it this year. It looks pretty darn good. It's called Osborne Prolific, and this is out of California. And the other one that I've got here is that I like, is fantastic, is Violette de Bordeaux. That's the violet of Bordeaux, France. So it was one that originally, it came out of that area, and it's been around a while. It has when you cut it, it looks like a full red strawberry on the inside. And it's a lot like LSU Black, very simple. Both of those are excellent. LSU Black, Violette de Bordeaux. Brown turkey has been around forever. It's good. This is one that we got out of Virginia. I call it we can't use their terminology because we infringe on their name. But this was the earliest one that I liked, and if I put anything in there, this is O'Rourke. And O'Rourke, I can pick, oh my goodness, I can pick it probably about the first day of July. And that's early for figs. Most of our figs would tend to be in late July, August, early September. Celeste and brown turkey are the two that have been planted in this state more than any other. And they're both good. That's what, you'll see some today if you walk out there that we've had 2 freezes on and we've cut them back, and it's a real problem. But this is Celeste, so we'll just take this one out and leave this one. But this is what I like. You see how this plant is coming out at the base, and then it's coming up with its branches. That is an excellent way of doing it. This one, it's got basil sprouts on it. It's coming up here. I cut it off right here. If I want it to go a little taller, I can let it. In California, they let them get taller. They pick with a ladder. If you want to pick from the ground, you're better off. Keep in mind, the more branches that radiate off that base, the more branches that radiate, the smaller you can keep the tree. If you let it all that energy go into one shoot, straight up, it'll grow like a pine tree. So, and you can still pick the low fruit, but the birds will get the high fruit. Yes.
What would be a name of, I guess I've heard of a white fig? You know, it doesn't turn that real dark purpley color, it's more of a light golden on the outside. Somebody called it a white fig. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, there's several white figs.
I think I have one,
But
and I just didn't know if I.
So let me tell you about the other, we're running out of time here because we gotta eat. But figs, the darker the color of the flesh, the skin. The darker the color of the skin, the more shelf life that fig has. The lighter the color. We grow one out here called lemon. And lemon is that darn big. But you better grow it just so that you got a patio right there. You can walk out where you're getting your coffee and walk out and get it and eat it. Because I can't hardly ship it. I can't hardly take it to Birmingham. But the flavor is fantastic. So for a family that enjoys eating it, and you can cook with it. But anything that's light colored, that's the reason. LSU purple, there's figs out there, LSU black and Violette de Bordeaux, which might be slightly sweeter than LSU purple, but LSU purple, I can hold it 2 weeks. It's got good shelf.
None of these names on here are the white one.
No.
They're all, okay.
I shy away. Now, we continue to put new figs in. This prolific that I just mentioned to you, it's partly white. Yes.
Are there any general rules to help you determine the best location to plant something, to plant a tree? Like if you just have a wide space, are there anything to help you decide where to plant it?
Okay. You take your most tender fruit plants. Oh, these up here, figs are the most tender. They're going to get hurt before any of the rest of them. Put them on the southeast side of your home. Put them where you've got an area of trees blocking the northwest wind. I worked in Texas years ago, and when you go up to Amarillo, which is almost to Denver, Colorado, the growers plant their trees on a lean like this. They throw that tree into the northwest wind. After the year of growth has occurred, that tree has come right back up and now it's straight. That's how bad wind can be on trees, on your location. The more things you've got, a house, a tree, blocking some of that northwest wind, the better off you are.
Is that always why people say plant big trees close to your house?
Absolutely.
It's because of blocking wind?
Yes. Now, if you can put rocks, we've actually increased the temperature of this property here by 1 to 2 degrees over the last 20 years by hauling in all of this gravel you see. Every place you go around this farm, you're going to find gravel roads and gravel walkways. It absorbs a little more heat and it releases that heat all night long. And I've got a little lake out here, about 1.5 acre lake. That's where I put my kiwi. And because it will moderate the air that's coming across that lake, even though it's a small lake, it still has an effect. Yes?
Are figs relatively shade tolerant?
What?
Are they shade tolerant figs?
Figs, I would say all tree fruit. Got a neighbor right down the road down there, put apples out there, 10 years old, they're this tall. And that's not because of dwarfing, that's because he's got pine trees within 10 feet of him. The way I would use, you need to be 30 feet away from a big tree. You want max performance on any of these. Now, if you've got a field line that's running from your septic tank, you do not want to put that tree around anywhere close to those drain lines because they will find it. And now the other thing is, if you like raspberries, this is where shade really comes in. If you want to try a few, and normally the raspberries that we can grow around here, I can hold in this hand what I'll get crop off one I've had for 5 years. But I enjoy seeing that 5 fruit right there, and I can eat it. And I feel a level of accomplishment. But blackberries, totally different. You can grow the world in blackberries. But what you could do to modify, they don't like the heat. If you have raspberries or something similar to that, always put them where they get the morning sun and they get afternoon shade. The afternoon sun is a hot sun. So don't put anything, if you do that, you probably increase the amount of fruit you can get off the plant. Okay. Yes.
How do you prune a fig tree to make it really die out instead of growing?
Well, what I do is I eliminate the leader in the center of the plant, like I was showing you up here. If I can start out with it like that, it makes all the difference in the world. I want 45-degree angles. You don't want those branches coming down like this because this part of that branch, when you have a radiational freeze, it will freeze. The underside will be okay, but it causes those branches to die. You want the branches coming out like this. And you don't want it to get more than what you can reach by hand unless you want to pick them from a ladder. I'll go to the southeast side of my tree, and I have a door that I can get into my tree on the southeast side for a fig tree. And I've done that for years. You gotta have a place to get in there, to prune, and to harvest. Now, if you let all those get too dense, oh, it's a beautiful tree, but you can't access the tree to get the fruit off. So you have to have areas where you can enter the tree. Anybody else?
Can you grow a lot of these in large containers?
Absolutely.
I always get bit, like right now, I get a cold front and the blooms get snapped, but if you had like a high tunnel that you could take a tractor fork and move 5 by 5, 6 by 6.
That's smart. That's
That means
absolutely
you could
cool.
just about grow anything here like
Yes,
that
you
way.
could. Not only that, if you're willing to provide a little propane when you need it, you can grow citrus in that. protective, the whole world is turned to protective agriculture around in all the different countries in Europe and all over. And what am I saying? They're growing plants inside buildings, inside structures of different kinds. Maybe just a PVC pipe tunnel, or it may be a real fancy, expensive house. But this is what's happening in a lot of places on small fruit, blueberries, blackberries. It's happening in some tree fruit areas. So those are things, and things will continue to change. One thing you'll find out when you get into gardening on fruit is it's not static. It does change. Some things get better, some things get worse. Have we got things set up back there, Gene?
We got lunch at 18.
I see about half the crowd
We're ready.
is ready. You got two choices. One of them is to sit in here and look at my programs I've got on DVD. Or the other one is to walk out and walk through some of the blocks that we've got out here today. And while you're here, that might be your best choice. All right. Even bad things are good examples. So I always show people, if I've got something that's got a problem and it's going down, this is what it looks like. So you may have the same thing. But right now, there's nothing out there that we've sprayed recently that's going to affect you with an organic spray or a conventional spray. So you don't have to worry about that. However, once we get past Tuesday, with all the rain, we're supposed to get 2 to 5 inches. We will definitely be back in there putting copper on and a late oil spray, et cetera, because we're going to need it. Even this year, have you been noticing the news? California they're covered up in Southern California with water. And that's an area out there with a Mediterranean climate that normally they don't worry about that. And they'll tell you, oh, I'd much rather put water on than worry about getting it from up here. Well, if you grew up in the South, you're still getting it from up here and you got used to it. You just adapt to it. Anybody got a particular question?
I have a question about, when we were talking about the herbicides and the fungicides and all that kind of stuff. I've always been real scared of using anything because I have bees.
Okay.
So what would you tell me?
Well, if we walk by part of a little demonstration row I've got on stone fruit, you're going to walk right by our bees. Now, Jason and the gentleman who brought the bees think they're okay. I personally would move those bees about 2 more terraces over from where we spray. But you take a look at it. That's a good idea. You look at it and see what you think. Now, granted, the openings in the hives is on the other side.
Okay.
So
that makes a big
so
difference.
I understand that makes a big difference. And we spray everything with a hydraulic type sprayer. It's a 100-gallon sprayer. It has about 80 to 100 psi, and we can reach up a good 30 feet or better. You don't need all that if you just have a few trees. You can just a few trees you can do with a 2-gallon sprayer. Pretty easy. Now, as you age a little bit, you no longer appreciate putting that shoulder sprayer on you and hauling that 3.5 gallons of water on your back all over the place. So you can put it on a little cart and pull that little cart along. There's all sorts of ways that I've watched people adapt to ways that they think is the best way to get their spray out there. A lot of commercial sprayers use air. They take a small amount of the liquid with the chemicals And with air, they press air, so they displace the air in the tree and fill it with just a fine film of spray. Others use a conventional water. And that means if you're thinking in terms of, some of you may have more than just a few trees. We start out with about 30 or 40 gallons per acre, which is about a quart per tree. That's not much. But then as that tree foliates and gets bigger and thicker, then it takes more penetration to get your coverage on the leaves. You're covering leaves and you're covering fruit. Those are the important parts, because those leaves may shed off of there if you don't get good coverage, because a lot of these problems cover leaves and the fruit. So for that reason, we have those small sprayers. So anyone can use that. And if you've just got a small area and that's what you want to do, it's getting the material where you need it. You got to get it on the fruit, on the leaf, on the little stem tissue. You do that, you're fine. And don't be afraid of if it rains all your spray. If it rains more than a ½ inch after you spray, you will get minimal result from your spray. However, if I see it's going to spray, if it's going to rain several days in a row, it's perfectly fine to put your spray on the day before that rain begins, because it's very effective in taking care of things at that point. Then when you get past the rain, you can hit it with another spray. So don't be afraid of putting it on just because tomorrow it's going to flood. Sometimes it's more beneficial to do that than it is just forget it. Any other questions?
Electrostatic, you use electrostatic spray?
Yeah, those work fine. Absolutely. We've used those before too. You can, if you've got just a plant or two in a greenhouse, you can take a little atomizer can and go in there and spray them and do quite good. You can buy an RTU. I didn't bring any RTUs. RTU is ready to use. And then you just squeeze it and spray them. Well, if you've only got a few and you're just starting some, it's just an easy way to do it, and you don't mix up so much chemical. Because chemical comes in all kinds. Wettable powder, a liquid, a prill material. Gosh, the companies have come up with all types of ways to put their chemical into some substance that you can then apply to your tree. Okay. You started to raise your hands. Would you like to go outside?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well. Everybody remember what I was talking about on incompatibility of plants? Look at these trees. This is your rootstock. This is your sign variety. Notice this one. You see how the sign portion has overgrown the rootstock. That's typical. This is Caleriana rootstock. It's the one that a lot of you grow at your house, just for the beauty of the tree. Same way here. Now, you see what happens here? These two just choked this one out. This is a kefir. It produces fruit which is pyriform, pear-shaped. The others are all orient, and the orient produces fruit that looks like a little grapefruit. And they're both excellent, and they don't require a lot of care. We do spray some on occasion, but if what you wanted was just good, hard cooking pears, orient and kefir are nicely. Now, kefir is a little more prone to fire blight than orient. For that reason, whenever we spray the apples and spray our Asian pears, we'll spray these. Otherwise, I've seen a kefir tree with so many hits. The tree, that is, here's a branch here that's dead. Here's one that's here that's dead. One that's here. The tree's full of dead branches from fire blight, and it still produces a crop of fruit. They're amazing. But we do go in and we do take out affected plants, and if this one is blighted right here, I'm going to come in here and go back at least 6 inches to make my cut right here to get rid of it. And then, depending on where you are and if you can burn those branches or you can bury them. Just get rid of them because they're still a source of the bacteria.
So you don't want to compost those?
I would not put anything that's that badly affected in a compost pile.
Yep.
Because I don't really think you can get the temperature high enough, long enough
Right.
to take them out. So I would much rather do that, and that way if you burn them, no big deal. Now Jason and I are both involved in a conservation project for this farm, and that conservation project includes mulching. It includes what else, Jason?
Well, we're doing monarch planting, so we're doing,
The butterfly.
monarch butterfly species. And then cultural planting, so we're looking for some things that aren't planted as much, like walnuts, that we're planting, and then serviceberry and some of those guys. So some of the, and pawpaws.
And pawpaws. Absolutely. So what I'm saying is they kind of frown on seeing all the growers around here with burn piles because they feel like we're filling the air with a particulate that's not necessary. And sometimes they don't understand, some of the people involved, that we can't compost these darn things because you're never going to get rid of fire blight with composting. But we can bury them, but burying them, Jason, is a lot more trouble.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone, you notice we've had these pruned back. When we started, we had 4. Now we've got 3 here. You notice how this one went right in between this one? Well, this one is essentially gone. I cut it out. But these work beautiful, and they hang down and they're full of fruit. And this is not as bad as some things that people use for this purpose, an entrance. That is, they don't drop all of those fruit that you got to walk across that are rotten that you're not going to eat. And we got one over here that Jason likes that I can't understand. Jason, the shade cover is one that produces beans that'll shoot at you when you walk through there.
Yeah, that's wisteria. Wisteria.
Wisteria.
That was 30 years ago when I didn't know what I was doing. One of those mistakes, right? Yeah, I know. So, and that's the Chinese wisteria that Dad's talking about, which will produce beans. We do grow the Native American wisteria now. We've learned our lesson, thankfully. And it doesn't produce the beans or travel quite as vigorously.
I have honestly walked through that one time and had to duck.
It does. It builds up a gas like Dad's talking about. So if you've ever been around the Asian wisteria, one of the ways that it has to proliferate is the bean ripens, builds up a gas inside, and it sounds like a gun going off. And that's how it distributes the seed. So we've seen lots of customers hit the ground. Gunshots.
Oh, that's I want that.
But that's a very effective means because when it shoots that seed out, it plants it.
Oh, it does.
For sure.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Okay, so y'all have been forewarned when you come back later in the year.
Go that way.
All right, let's take a walk out here, and I'll show you an apple tree I worked on a little yesterday just to show you some ideas. Out here, just kind of stretch out across here because I'm going to give you some information before we get to the trees. And I know you like the wind. It just makes us move around more. As I mentioned inside, these were planted in 2000. almost all of them were on Emila 106 and Emila 7 rootstock. That's an English rootstock. Commonly in this area of Alabama, apple trees may start going out after year 15, 20, and 25. These are plastic, but you see all the spots. Notice larger trees right here. Those are Fuji's. That's the original Fuji. After World War II, when Japan was giving up, they were producing apples and pears. So that Fuji it doesn't look like much, in my opinion, because it doesn't color up. But wow, it is delicious. It's but you notice 3 tiers of branches: a lower tier, a middle tier, and a second tier. Now, those are quite vigorous, and you notice the third one is really vigorous. We go up and we cut those back to where that branch is only a foot or 2 above the wire. Remember what I said? This was the old system: 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet wires. When you get over to the pears, those are 3, 5, and 7, and that's because the pears aren't on any type of stock any type of dwarfing rootstock. These are on a semi-dwarf rootstock. Now, those trees, if we didn't prune them back, they would get about 12 to 18 feet tall. We keep them at about 9 feet, and you see those are above 9 feet now, so we'll take all of those out. And I'll show you what, but those are standard trees. They're not spur type. They take longer to come into bearing. But when you put them on a dwarfing rootstock, it accelerates. It takes a good 2 years away from that time frame. Instead of being 4 to 6 years, now it's 2 to 4 years. If you put a spur type apple on a dwarfing rootstock, it's a double dwarf. So you really, some of these, when I planted them, the same year they flowered. That's real, but you don't want them to do much that first year. You need to grow tree, because they will zonk out on you, as some growers use the term. They use the term runt. They'll runt out on you. You can see a branch, the upper branches on these, to some degree, they have run it out on us because we've overfruited it. But those are spur type trees you see right here. Those 3 and the 2 right here. That's Cumberland spur, and it's a red delicious. It's excellent. It's wonderful to work with, but they're 10 times easier to prune rather than look at all the wood I've got to cut off of those trees. Yes.
What do you mean by spurring type?
A spur type means, when we get out here, I'll show you. When the branch comes out, rather than the branch just growing and growing and growing, it immediately produces short branches, and each one of those short branches produces a spur type bud. In other words, a spur is a dwarf apple tree. You got what I'm saying?
I think so.
Are we taking off the buds? Just pinching off the buds on that limb?
You could, but that takes a lot of time.
It would be a long time,
Yeah.
so.
But if you only had 1 or 2 trees, you could do that.
Okay.
So when you do these, now we prune these right now. We prune them in February and we prune them in March. You don't want to start pruning these things back in the fall. That doesn't work well for apples, and it doesn't work well for peaches or plums or anything else. But the spur tree, you won't see much of it on a peach. They can spur if you don't prune them and make them force vigorous branches out. They will tend to spur a little bit, but apples will spur all the time, and so will pears. But when you get out here, you'll see the growth. See how long some of those shoots are? Now look at these trees here. See those little branches on those? Those are the spurs. And it makes a world. This plant is making fruit. This is making growth. And what we want to do is a little balance of both. We want to keep them growing, and if you don't keep them growing, they run out. So you got to give them enough nitrogen and grow. You got to prune them. And two trees on the end down there coming this way, this is what we call the north tier. Those two trees are Yates, and Yates is an old-timey apple, which is excellent. It's out of central Georgia from years and years ago. It's over about 200 years old. We use that one, and then we've got another, on the south tier, we've got another old antique apple down there. But we've got Ginger Gold and Fuji on the far block down there. And those are two of the finest apples that we've got. Now the problem with Ginger Gold is it is a 950 to 1,000 hour variety. It does well here, but to go much further south would be tough. But Fuji and Gala do beautiful. They're about a 650 to 750 hour variety.
And was that what you were saying, the two that you think were two of the finest?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I were going to, and the other thing I was trying to get across is we have a disease on apples. It's not as bad on pears, but it's called bitter rot. And the reason I took Granny Smith out of this block right here, we had 3 Granny Smiths and they were spur type. That is, when I say spur type Granny, they're dwarf Granny. And then we put them on a dwarf rootstock. And good gracious, that rot problem, even if we use Cap-10 and some of the best chemicals, it's almost impossible. We'd throw half the fruit away. And the gardener wouldn't want to do that. So I've kicked it out. But what I have found is, Jason, the dwarf one we got. Let's see. Trying to see if I had any. Oh yeah, I've got Arkansas Black.
Yeah.
The 2 trees down there, the one on the far end is Mutsu. Mutsu is a Japanese Golden Delicious. It's excellent, but it's got sterile pollen, so it can't pollinate anything. But you got to have a tree by it to pollinate it.
How close do trees have to be to pollinate?
The safest distance, I would say, is about 30 feet. It's like muscadines out here. You don't want to go more than, we space muscadines 12 feet apart in rows. You don't want to go more than the 3rd row has got to change. There's 2 rows of one variety, then another. Same thing is whole for some of these dwarf type apples. But I like Mutsu, it's quite good. And the next one to it is Spur Arkansas Black. And Spur Arkansas Black is one of the toughest varieties out here against bitter rot. In other words, I know it's hard for you to understand how bad that is, but you'd have to be out here when we're picking apples to know how bad we hate. It is the equivalent on an apple as brown rot is to a peach. In other words, the one we fight all the time on peaches is brown rot. We got other things, but anyway, that's the one you deal with. But we have tried to take off all those low branches, and that's helped a lot on these because that plant, believe it or not, behaves as a rhizomatous plant, and that means it's producing underground stems into the shoulder of the row, and then it'll send up a shoot. And if you notice when you walk out here, we've taken up those trees that were dead or diseased, and you can see that growth coming up right near the base right now. But let me show you out here one that I pruned yesterday just to give you an idea. Look at the growth on this. All right. The only flower bud on that branch is right there. Now, somebody wrote the book on apples, and they said pears and apples only fruit on terminal buds. This is terminal. This is lateral. Peaches fruit only on lateral buds, not on terminals. And I've lived long enough to tell you, whoever wrote that book didn't stay out in the field very long. My goodness alive. when you get down there to one of the other antiques that we've got, this is what you see. Now, where is it spurred up? Where are any flower buds? If there's any at all, it's right there on the end. So before I can spur this up, I gotta cut these back. And that is not easy. You can come in here like this. Now, here you go. See if I cut this right here? You want to grab that for me? All right. When I cut it, it's starting to spur right there. Those will be spurs next year and they'll fruit. But look at this one. Here's the additional growth on this one, but there's no hardly any spurring at all. So I don't need it. I got too many already. All right, and see all these that are coming up here? You take one and you leave one. This one's too close to the tree, but I've got a spur right there, so I'll just leave that. I'll cut that one out, and I'm gonna come under here and cut that out. Now, I'm gonna cut that out, and I've separated these, and because this one has no fruit, we're gonna cut it off right there, just like that. And all we've done is we've opened up that area for air movement, sun coming in. This one's in the center. I'm gonna take it out. Look at this one. It's spurring up, but notice where it's spurring up. It's spurring up back here. It's not spurring up out here. But look at this one. Now, that is a spur tree. Look at the difference between these two. Every one of those is a flower bud. And when you get that, apples and pears are mixed buds. That bud not only has a flower bud in it, it's got a leaf bud in it. So you may see some of both coming out. But that's what we're talking about. Rather than growing this distance, now notice they're spurring up a little down here, but look how far it is up here. This one spurs up immediately. You got to watch it. You don't want it to spur too fast because it runs out. That is, it'll stop growing because it's just putting all of its energy into making food. Does that make sense? Anybody got a question?
Can you make this one go back growing?
Yes. But look what's happened up top. That's beautiful because I only wanted it halfway. This is ideal. All we have to do now is go up in here and thin the spurs out. There's too many spurs on it. So if we thin them out, then it'll start producing some vigor. But if we leave them, it'll load down and we'll have a heck of an apple crop, but we won't have, it'll reduce next year's crop. Believe it or not, apples, kind of like a pecan tree, you overfruit them and they'll give you a very light crop the next year. Look at that spur tree there. See, all these right here are spur trees. But look how much spurring you've got. There's enough on there for 50 fruit. And what are you going to do? You're going to have a fruit about every 4 to 6 inches. That's what you want. So we have to come in here like this one has been thinned out a little bit. But notice it's coming from all over the place. And this is what you want. But see, this branch, that's what you call running out. I have to get in there and cut the heck out of it to make it come back and produce some vigor. Now the one on the other side is pretty good. But this tree, the way it is, with the pruning that we would do on it, 200 pounds of apples, you're going to have to eat pretty good to eat through that many apples, which is quite nicely. I'm not very big, but look how small this tree is compared to anything else, and especially the food. Look at the diameter of the trunk on the feet. It's just growing. So we have to go in there and just Because last year we got hit real hard and these trees had a very light crop. Anybody got a question? You see what I'm talking about on all the spur development on these trees? It's you want a balance of both, and preferably if you can. Don't let it come off of the truck.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
And when it gets up to this point, you can
Keep it on the scaffold and don't let it grow.
This is the head of the tree, and we just thin it out some, and we will take some of this off. But, oh my goodness, this one is so easy to prune compared to this one. And you can prune 4 of these when you're pruning 1 of these. Anybody got a question? Let me show you down here on this yates.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
So, you're talking about the young trees can run out pretty early. What do you do specifically to keep the young trees from running out so they can grow up?
Thin them heavy.
Okay.
Thin the fruit heavy. You do that, you're fine.
Okay.
So what happens is if you don't thin them, see, we have chemicals we can use as a chemical thinner, or we can simply do it by hand. And when I put somebody out here, if they've never thinned fruit before, it's like some of the gardeners I've worked with through the years. I can look them in the eye and tell you, yeah, you heard everything I said, and when you go home, you're not going to thin that fruit. I mean, to some people, I said, good Lord, you plant a tree, then you cut the heck out of it, and then you fill it with fruit, and then you throw most away. Well, that's just kind of the name of the game. Let me show you what I did down here on this Yates tree.
I missed kind of what you said, but the little beginning of the branches are what are they higher up?
Well, you talking about the spurs? Yeah, all these little branches are spurs. And what you can do, you can come in here and cut half of them out. Okay, you can thin the spurs, and we do that some to reinvigorate the tree. See, these trees are going into their 23rd year, so they've been here a while. And they're planted 9 feet apart.
Are these all different fruit, or are they all?
We're big ones are features. Those starting like this come with a spur. And that's the reason they call them spur. You see how they spur up. Now, look at all the growth on this. You say, why in the world? Why do I leave them like this? Why don't we go ahead and prune them? If Sue was out here, she would tell you. Sue Webb, she works with us, and she does a lot of my budding. You see this right here? I'm gonna hold that for you. All right, here we go. That's the best budwood in the country. Look at that. Those buds are fantastic. I cut this wood and we put it in our cooler. That way, as we bud, we know exactly what's going on that plant. And when I say it's a Fuji, it's a Fuji. Because we control the bud source. And if we see anything wrong with a tree, we don't take budwood off of bad trees. So it makes a world of difference. And this one right here, I could bud 20 plants off that one shoot.
What does that mean? Are you grafting them on? Is that what you use it to graft onto another piece of wood to make a tree? Is that what you mean by putting it in the freezer and watching it?
Yeah. Let me show you. I'll hold this up real high so you can see what I'm doing. This is my bud, and what we'll use is a hang bud, also called a chip bud. And I simply come in here like this, and I'm going to go below the bud about a ½ inch, and I'm going to cut into it, and I'm going to put it down here so I don't cut my finger. Then I'm going to go up above it. Once you cut it, I go up above it like that. Now, once I do that, I simply bring my knife over like that, and that's my bud right there. Okay? Then,
I'll use this.
yeah. Then this is my rootstock. Okay? Hold that for me. Thank you. All right, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna hang it. This is a hang bud. I simply go up here, and people say, well, have you got to put it right where there's another bud? No, you don't have to do that. Just put it wherever you want. You want a straight line, as straight as you can get it. Don't put it up where it's curving. It's hard to pull it tight. So I simply start up here, and I cut this down just like you see right here. I'm cutting into the wood just a little bit, okay? Then I cut the top of that off, just like there. Now see, that's opened up, but I've got a little flap down below. Now, I simply take this bud and make sure you got it right side up. A bud knows its head from its tail. So if you put it down like this, they'll take, and then they'll try to grow down, and then they're trying to figure out where they are. So if when you do that, you're going to take this bud right here, and right underneath it, you're going to slide that bud in just like that. All right, you bring it down to right about there, and that's pretty darn good right there.
Would you show this side too, please?
Now,
You show them.
one side is not lined up. I've got one side lined up with a cambium. That's that cambial tissue that produces new cells constantly. So it'll callus. Now, when we do this the 1st of March, in about 14 days, that's healed over. Then we simply come up here and break it off. This becomes a nurse limb. We leave the leaves on it, it carries on photosynthesis, it gives food back to the bud, and once that bud, I simply go above it and I cut about a 1/2 inch just like that to force this bud to grow rather than the buds around it. Once that bud starts growing and it gets up about this high, then we can go ahead and cut this off. Then we'll come right back in where the bud is after I've got a shoot up here about this tall, and I simply cut it off.
And that has to be, so that piece that, like you're pretending like that was a trunk, a piece with roots on it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, I've kept this as a nurse limb. Now, this bud is now reached to this point. All right. I simply come in here. I can take this and I can go around it. I did it with my knife, but I can do the same thing, just like that. Go around, and I'm severing it. And then once that gets up, the bud gets to about this height, I simply come in here, and I always leave a little. It's at a slant, but I always leave tissue so that the rainwater runs off of it, and I leave the high side where the bud is. Everybody see? And now
you don't have to tape that. You just stick it in there and you don't have to tape it.
No, I do. I tape it.
You tape it, okay.
I use buddy tape.
Yes, okay.
Buddy tape will cost you $35 a roll. You can get it online anywhere. It's the Japanese are pretty smart people, and they've developed they've developed a wrap that's just better than anything. I've used rubber bands. I've used pieces of cloth that people poured beeswax on. There used to be buddy tape right now. If you're going to bud, my goodness, it's so easy. It's laughable. But now take on apple. If we do this, we can get about an 80 to 90% take. That's pretty darn good. If you do it on citrus, you get about a 50 to 70% take. Then you go back and you rebud that same tree with the same material. Anybody got a question?
Yeah, so this is in your hand, but when you do it for real, is this
rooted in the ground?
This is, well, no. I bring in rootstock from Oregon, and I put it in my cooler, and I bring it out, and what I've got is the portion, the top part of the cutting. Remember I said that they produce them on stool beds. Stool bed is where you cut the top of the apple tree off. It produces a whole bunch of new shoots at the base, and you put soil and other material around it, and they root. So when I get it, I got a whole mass of roots here on this end, and I simply cut off a portion of this because they're always too tall. And then I put it back in the cooler and leave it about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 or 4, and then bring it out and pot it. And that's all you, and then for 1 year, you can make a tree. You just have to time it. But I do bring in rootstock, and we go with whatever rootstock we need at that time. Everybody see what I'm talking about? Okay. Now, anybody got a question?
You have a problem with cedar apple rust?
Cedar apple rust. Cedar apple rust is not a problem on red delicious apples, red apples. It is a problem on golden, and we got so many names on them. Myclobutanil is what I use to prevent it.
How about Fuji's?
Fuji's, they're not they're not as bad, although this is not a red apple. This does not get that much blush. It gets some blush, but not a great deal. It gets kind of a greenish yellow finish, but of course the flavor is excellent, and it's quite good. They've done a lot of nutritional studies, and they've found that the darker the color of the fruit, the higher the level of antioxidants in the fruit. So a lot of the antioxidants are in the skin. And I tell people, don't throw the skin away, eat the whole thing. Some people don't, but it's like when muscadines are ripe, I put them in my mouth, I chew them up, and I bite those seeds. And they're bitter. But then I leave enough juice in there to mix with it that I can swallow it. And I do about 6 or 8 fruit like that, and I've taken mine for the day. Otherwise, you can order them out of Georgia and get a 30-day fill of dried, cut up muscadine seed, which is one of the highest levels of antioxidants that you can find. But you can do it right out of your own muscadine if you wanted to do it while you're out there.
Is there anything you can do organically for cedar apple rust? We get it on our pears too.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Pears will get it. And our native crabapple out here, Alabama's native crabapple, it's bad about it. But I can spray it twice with myclobutanil and forget it.
Is that organic?
No, it's not organic, and probably the next best thing you could probably use is copper. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at this Yates tree right here. Didn't have a chance to take them out. All right, look at this. This is one, you see that branch is kind of rutted out? Look at this one. It's rutted out because now this one is coming along, but see this one right here? This put all the energy in this tree rather than around the tree. You got a few shoots, and that's what you want to see on some of these. Now see on the other side, it balanced out pretty good, but it's on the low branches. Whoa. All right, wait, don't pull yet. All right. Great. That one cut, everything else is separated, everything else will make fruit. But that's how easy it is to prune a spur type tree. In other words, I could go over there, if I don't need those to make new shoots, I'll simply cut them in half or I'll get rid of them. Yes, absolutely. But I want to keep some of this vigor on this tree. Otherwise, I got a problem. That tree will go down. And then when he gets a disease, it really goes down. See what we did here? I did this yesterday. And people have asked, well, what about treating this? You can if you want to. Generally, a cut that big, you're okay. But if you were making bigger cuts, I would spray them with an atomizer with Clorox. 1 part Clorox, 9 parts water. A 10% solution. Do that, leave it about an hour, let it dry, and then come back in with a little brush and just put on white water-based latex paint. If you put that on there, and see how this one is dying back, I didn't spray it, but it's coming out right here. So the larger the cut, the more the necessary. People ask that question, should I do anything where I've cut that? And if it's too big, yes, you should. Absolutely. Otherwise, it'll get invasion in it and you got a problem. Now, the best thing to do is if you've got your trees where you can and you cut them like this, the same day you cut them, go back out there and spray them with copper. And you've got them all protected.
Can I ask you a question about the trunk of this first tree?
Yes.
You see how that line is right there? What causes the little in the bark, the line?
Oh, that's growth.
Oh, okay.
A tree can grow so fast, it'll split the bark. But usually when it does, it peels back over, and see, that's calloused back over.
Okay, so not a
Now,
problem.
the ones you worry about are those that didn't callus back over. Those were caused by freeze.
Okay, that'll get like a hole.
Yeah. Usually the freeze damage on a tree will be on the south side of the tree. Cold air comes through. The north side stays cold, so it stays tough. But the sun's over here, it hits the south side, and it makes the south side of that bark. You can take your hand on even a cold day with the sun shining, put your hand on the north side, south side. There's 10 to 20 degrees difference. And if you have a freeze that next night, it splits it on the south side, and that's where you got a problem. People ask, should I paint them? You can paint them if you want to. It's not necessary. Some people paint and they put an insecticide in the paint. So, but you see, just as much as this little Yates tree has spurred up, and this is off of one that we cut last year. See the little spurs on this one? And you've got spurs all up here. All that fruit you see that's left up there, we have to get that off as we continue to spray. Now what I did here is I opened this up. We're not going to let it get any further out than this. You see this wire? I'm a little off my distance. 3 feet is what I do. Anything beyond 3 feet we cut off. Because you can't afford to let it continue, because it's going to droop to the ground and you can't. So you got to cut these so that they're constantly picking their weight up. So when they get all those apples on there and it goes down, you're not on the ground. But this is fairly open. Now here's your next 2 tiers. I didn't take everything out of here, but this is fairly open, and this is fairly open up here. But we may take a little more on the other side, just get on the other side, and that's not too bad. Yates is not nearly as bad as Fuji. Fuji just loads up with vigor. It's a very vigorous tree. And anything that's very vigorous, you got to be circumspect on getting into a problem with fire blight. Okay, anybody got a question?
What tree does this come from? Is this a...
Well,
not a Fuji.
That one, no, that one is off of the Cumberland Spur. No, I'm sorry, it came off of Fuji. Yeah, but see, on this one, it's spurring up on Fuji, but notice this one didn't spur up, and notice it spurred up down here, but it's not spurring up here. That's the difference in a standard tree and a spur tree. And what I'm telling you is that spur trees are so nice because you can take time to breathe and get a cup of coffee while you're pruning that one. This one over here, you got to yell to your neighbor to come over and give you a hand. So it makes a big difference. All right, everybody? Are you okay for walking? We're going to walk down on a demonstration row on the other side over here, and I'm going to show you some big trees over there and some others. What we're going to end up over the ocean pears and the figs. Look at this one. Now, the only reason it hasn't been cut anymore so is we got to take all these lower branches off. And you see all those sucker type growth on the back side and next to the wall there. This tree, believe it or not, has produced 200 pounds of pears. It is absolutely full, and I don't know that I've ever had a pear that had a better flavor than this one. It is absolutely. But what we'll do, we'll come in here and we'll cut all this stuff off right here. All this is really, really low. See what we had to do last year? That was to keep these others up. Now, take a look at that tree. Now, where are your spurs on it? You see them? But see, it didn't spur up like that apple. If you look right here, there's one. There's two, there's one there, one there, and you got some here. Now, if I cut these right now, pears will fool you. I show people how to cut peaches and apples, but the pear will look dead all the way out. It looks like that thing's totally dead, but the actual female structure, the actual flower, is back almost into the woody area you see right there. So if you cut that and you see all that dead stuff, you think it's dead, and I did for a while. But this one, pears can take about minus 20 degrees for the toughness of the tree. Now the flowers, no difference. A plum and a peach actually is 1 degree better than an apple and a pear. Apple and a pear, once they're in flower stage, 28 degrees can just mutilate them. And so we try not to prune anytime when we're approaching a freeze. And I've mentioned that several times because it makes a world of difference in what you do.
I have a question. A friend told me that water spouts, like more water spouts will occur if you over pruned. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay, what amount do you recommend pruning? Like what is too much to prune on a tree? Like 20%, 80%?
Well, I wouldn't take more than 20 to 30% off of the tree in any one given year.
Yeah, okay.
If you do, you're going to end up with a lot of vigorous growth in the tree.
Okay. And then I also learned that you were supposed to cut like all of the water spouts out, but last year an extension agent told us to keep on, especially on peaches, to like cut them in half to keep the limbs, like the scaffolds, from getting sun scalds. What do you recommend on cutting water spouts?
If it's on the interior part of the tree,
yeah,
where sun could come in and set, I never skin it. That is, I don't totally take them out.
Okay.
I'll prune them back.
Okay.
In other words, if it's a branched one, maybe there's 2 or 3 little branches, I might leave one branch. But you do that, now the bulk of them I'll take out, but I'm going to leave up and down those scaffolds, and when we get out there, I can show you an example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you get too much sunlight in there, and if the sun, believe it or not, the sun will just bake your bark. I mean, it will if a tree's not used to it and you suddenly eliminate all the spots where they've had protection from the sun, it'll mark, and then you'll get disease in those areas. That's the problem.
I don't know what a water spout is.
Okay, a water sprout is what you see growing right over there.
Okay, those suckers?
Those suckers.
Oh, okay.
That's a water sprout.
All right.
The ones up against the wall, is that what you're
That's
up against the wall?
in some cases you may need a water sprout. If you're replacing, your point is, if you need a branch in that location and it's real wide open, it's perfectly fine to take that water sprout and cut it in half and make a branch. But if you don't need it, you get it out of it.
Okay.
You said frost, the pear trees, would you be pruning them now?
Apples and pears, yeah, I'd prune them. The only thing I would watch the freeze forecast and try to stay at least 2 days away from any freeze.
Okay, so if it freezes though after a while, you're okay, like a late spring, one of these April freezes?
Oh yeah. And people, what I've found over the years is when we have a really nice day in the wintertime, and people are so sick and tired of winter that they want to cut something. So they go out of the house and they start working on the first thing that looks like it needs whacking. And you're better off if you don't touch that tree, let it go ahead and flower, and then prune it. But it's hard to do that. If you wait that late, that foliage canopy covers up everything, and it's easier to prune trees that don't have a canopy because you can see what you're doing. So what I do is I try to hit it somewhere in between. I'm going to let it stay as late as I can. But the average fruit grower can't do that because they got acres and acres to get over, and they can't wait that long. But if you ride around this county right now, you'll see people pruning all over the place. And that's normal, and that's perfectly good. We've just got 900 hours of chilling. That satisfies the rest requirement on about every peach in this area except a few that are up to about 1,000, require 1,000 degrees. And generally, when it's cool like this, if it's dry, that's a safe time to prune. The worst time to prune is to get out there in the rain and prune while it's raining, or prune immediately before the rain. That you don't want to do.
So you can wait up until March maybe.
Oh, I've pruned peaches in April.
I mean, pears.
And pears, and I prefer to prune pears and apples earlier than peaches. Because they tend to flower 1 to 2 weeks later than peach. A peach tends to flower earlier. The reason we end up with an apple crop and we lost our peach crop is simply because the apples were 2 weeks later in flowering than the peaches. And that's what makes the difference. The flower itself, a peach flower, is just as tough or tougher than an apple flower. So, but I feel much safer pruning apples and pears now because they generally take a little more cold and they're slower in coming out. They don't have a plum, for example. The reason we get hit on plums, plum has a 400 to 600 hour chill requirement, but then it has a light heat requirement. It doesn't take many warm days to make it pop out. That's the problem. With apples, it takes a lot of warm days to make them pop out. Pears the same way. So peaches fit in between apples, pears, and plums. That's the difference. When you walk over here and look at these these peach trees, you're fixing to see. I can show you what I'm talking about.
Everywhere with that brown nose.
Couldn't believe it. We sold the rocks faster than we could sell the fruit. People like rock walls and all those type of things. Now this is our blackberry planting, which is in excellent shape. And if you look, the blackberry, you see the little shoot? They're half inch to an inch, half inch to an inch. These are beginning to break, but this is normal. This is a 10th, isn't it? 10th of February, and that's what I'd expect to see. They normally start about the 3rd or 4th of February, but this is Kiowa, and Kiowa only takes 200 hours of chilling. 200 hours. We get our chilling before Christmas, but it won't leaf out. It won't leaf out because it's high heat requirement. It's like a pecan tree. Pecan trees, they don't take but 400 to 600 chill hours, but they have a high heat requirement. And that's the reason that we can get by better with apples and pears. They have a high heat requirement and they're slower to come. That old plum and some of those low chill peaches, they're ready to pop. They don't want to hold back. Everybody see what I'm talking about? Now, if you'll notice, anything upright is slower to break than anything running horizontal. That's true on a tree, and it's true on these blackberries. And that's the reason these are designed this way. Notice all of these individual shoots here, those have been cut off because the best fruit are in the basal part of the shoot. Out where this hangs down, those berries are not as good. They're not as big, they're not as high quality. That's the reason when we get these side branches, like here, we'll simply cut it off. And each one of these has a cluster of 5 to 8 fruit, or at least that's the potential.
Now, if you cut that off, can you root that piece?
Absolutely. You wouldn't think so, because once this fruits this time and it dies, we'll have primocanes coming up from the ground. But now we suppress those primocanes. When they start popping, and they'll start popping now in probably about 2 or 3 weeks. When they start coming out of the ground, we'll let them get about yay long and we cut them off. And we'll cut them off probably once in April, well, maybe twice in April, twice in May, and once in June. We'll cut them 5 times. And we simply suppress them because we want all the energy to go into the floricane that's producing the fruit. Then once we're through picking this fruit, the 5th to the 10th of July, we stop suppressing those primocanes the middle of June, and by the 10th of July, those primocanes are this high. So as we reach in to take out the spent canes that we've just gotten rid of and take them out, we've already got our primocanes up high enough to tie them and start training them. And it makes it so easy.
So this is last year's cane?
Yes.
From the sprouts in June?
Last year, this was a primocane. Okay. Now it's a floricane. Same cane. Now, they have varieties now, kind of like a raspberry, that are primocane fruiting types. And that means is if you planted it today, put it in the ground, the primocane that would come up from the ground would simply do nothing until about probably in June. They'll start flowering, and they'll produce fruit in late July and probably August, September. But so far, we're so hot during that time frame, you can't do anything with them, and we can't get more than two pounds per plant. I can't afford to pay somebody to come out here and pick 2 pounds. It's ridiculous. So, but that's the upper part of that plant. Only the upper part of it fruits if it's a primocane fruiting. Next year, the rest of the cane. And I hate those because they don't fit with the system that I've got.
So this cane here is not made fruity.
That's correct. And it's easier to use Kiowa, which is a primocane, it's a floricane fruiting variety and not a primocane fruiting variety.
Have you ever tried trellising blackberries on 3 tiers?
Yes.
And
it's a hell of a lot of work. I've tried spacings of 3, 4, 5, 6 feet. I've tried different branching habits. Now, with this is a thorny type, thorny upright. If it were thornless, like some of them that we've got, people like a thornless one if they can get one, that one I may allow a second cane to develop. But the more cane, what I've found is I've developed a system that our workers can get out here and they can understand it. If I get too fancy with it and I walk through here and look at it, it's a mess. So I'm satisfied. What will these do? These plants you see right here can produce 10 to 12 pounds per plant. They'll produce 10,000 pounds to the acre. And that's berries you can pick. You can have a bush here and like a hedgerow, and you'll have a lot more berries, but your berries won't have quality, and you can't pick half of them because they're on the inside of the area. This is an open canopy type system. The ladies that come out here, we've had people with handicap come out here and get out off of their system and pick the bottom row, and then we let the kids pick the bottom row, and then we let everybody else pick the rest of them. We try to tailor it to the people that are coming out here so that when they get out here, they'll want to come back.
Right.
Yes.
Would this work with the native blackberry?
Native pawpaws?
No, native blackberry. Would it work with natives?
I've helped other people with the natives. The natives have a whole system of disease complexes. And on natives here, if I see a native, I kill it. Now, if there's some people, and I've worked with a few of them, that want to keep the natives and pick them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this produces, Kiowa produces a blackberry that's 20 to about 10 to 20 grams in size. Now 28 grams is an ounce. That fruit on Kiowa is big as a Mahan pecan, if you know what a Mahan pecan looks like.
They're a lot sweeter.
So they're so easy to pick. The ladies come out here sometimes and they bring their little kids and they spray them. And I tell them, I said, we don't have chiggers out here. We don't have snakes. If you do see one, you can see it. There it is. And it's crawling in that direction. So we try to provide an environment. Our lawyers tell us, what is the term they use? That if somebody's walking across your property, don't leave a hoe out there because they'll slap themselves in the face with it. Due diligence. We exercise due diligence. You know, and
10 to 12 pounds of fruit per plant.
I've produced 15 pounds per plant.
15 for
But that's not a standard.
Okay.
But I would say 8 to 12 pounds
Okay.
is a standard.
That's good. My mother, she has some growing, and then she does the jam with it. She has a can that gets the juice out, and it's just amazing. They're awesome. They're really good.
They are. I like this one because it fits our scheme for making it easy for people to pick. See, what happens is this shoot coming here, it cascades off of the wire down like this, and the fruit are out here. So when you walk in here, there's hardly any fruit that you got to look for. And that makes a big, big difference. But nobody's asked me about the leaves.
What about the leaves?
We've had 2 freezes of 10 degrees this year, or I guess you'd say last year and this year. 10 degrees, and you see any of these hurt? But look at the leaves. These leaves are still functional. This leaf is pumping carbohydrate into the storage of this plant right now. Whereas if you lost all your leaves, you wouldn't have that benefit. Now, usually when it hits about anywhere from 12 to 16 degrees, the leaves will all come off. But you see that some of them are still on there.
If you have an area with a lot of natives, how far do you need to keep them away from these?
Half a mile.
Oh.
But what you can do, if you put on sprays, and we put on sprays on these, and the sprays we put on here are not real bad sprays, so to speak. They're not mean. For example, this gets a rust on the leaf, and one of the downsides of leaving the leaves on there is these have the rust spores. Well, all I have to do to take care of that is come in here with my microbutanil and put one spray and then one more, and I don't have to worry about it. These leaves can stay on here and they won't infect the new leaves that are coming out. Okay? I think we're going to have to move. Let's see if we can. I didn't mean to get you in the blackberries because this. Oh, and we do have. Anybody want any fire ants?
We've got plenty.
Buy one, get one free today, huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you. That's right. Let's get over here in case we have to scramble somewhere. Next. Well, I tell you what. Let's just walk by. I was going to show these to you. Let's see if we can make it. These two trees you see here, those are the native Alabama crabapple. They're probably about 40 to 50 years old.
Now, if you plant one of the apples from that, the seeds from that, would those make pretty much the same crab apple?
Yes, yes, they would.
Good, because I have a friend of mine whose pawpaw, his original, she had taken cuttings before it absolutely died.
Oh,
and so now she's wanting to plant what she had started. And so that's good to know. So it'll grow up to be a crabapple tree then, just all by itself. Okay. You'll be excited to hear that.
You can see the size of these, and if you look on the ground underneath these crabapple trees, you'll see how much fruit. It's the only thing the deer won't eat around here. Okay, are we here? Oh, we're still coming.
Got some slackers.
All right, the first tree you see there is summer butte nectarine. It's there because it's about an 850-hour variety. It's tough as wet leather and it produces one of the finest nectarines around. My staff member Leo, who does the spraying for us, most of it, that's his favorite tree. As a matter of fact, he knows where every tree is on here that's the best tree. And he knows who's the first one to pick to see if they're ready to eat. But you notice all of these individual, and notice I'm reaching this. You see how high we let them get? That's because one year we decided that we were going to work from ladders. And we've got these trees where we work from ladders. Now we can lower the tree, bring it back down. We haven't done that yet, but if you look at this, those are the flower buds. These trees really caught it last year in the freeze. I mean, it hit them hard. And these trees are 12 years old, just to give you an idea. Now, we got a bora, peach tree bora, that attacks this tree all around here. Notice how we attach these, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4, that's what's called a quad. That's what we want. We want 2 branches this way, 2 branches this way. The problem is the tree doesn't know that. So it's not going to give us that. So we have to adapt our pruning to get as much of it as we can. And that's basically what you're seeing here. But you notice this is all open as can be. And when we cut these off, you notice that one didn't make it. When you start seeing caterpillars, you got a problem, because all of the sprays that we put on these trees are gone now. So we're going to have to spray them but we have to spray these for ambrosia beetle. Everybody know what an ambrosia beetle is?
Nope.
An ambrosia beetle, they will take a branch like this, and they will literally riddle it. And when you look at the trunk, it looks like somebody drove toothpicks into the trunk. When you see that, you got a problem. You need to spray that tree just as fast as you can spray that tree, because sometimes you may be too late to do any good. We put on sprays so that the plants you get from us have been sprayed for that particular problem.
Will the
box that you're offering prevent that as well? The apple box?
Yes, you've got one. One synthetic pyrethroid in there, and it works pretty well. But anyway, you got a. This is a nectarine example. These are prop poles. Normally, you would see these, and you would 30 years ago across all of America in apples, because they'd prop those limbs up. They didn't want to waste any fruit. But this one, you notice even where it's damaged, you notice how this is callousing over. When you see that type callousing, that's good. But you see that interior part right there, I could actually dig that out because it's dead. But when we cut one, and I'll show you down here, here's a good example, you probably can't see it, but we always leave a little area in here. See, it's callousing right there, but we left at least that much on that cut. If you cut it flush all the way, see, this has got a little portion here, but anytime you cut them flush, they'll be invaded with bacteria and fungi. So you got a real problem. But these trees are producing about 150 to 200 pounds of peaches or nectarines. And you can see what hits the ground here.
Is that beetle specifically a peach invader?
No, that insect will attack anything. It'll attack ornamentals, it'll attack shade trees, it'll attack all of them. I'll show you what we do on peachtree borer. Peachtree borer we get at the base of the tree. That's one insect. Then if a tree has a problem and it's a little bit weak, then you've got the other beetle, and called the ambrosia beetle. Those are two different insects, and we're having to take care of them. And I'm just alerting you so you would know that. Now, this is the youngest tree in here, except for one down there. See that? That's exactly what you want. It has a sloughing off bark, kind of like a crepe myrtle does, and a lot of that bark will just peel off. But where are you? No, I don't see it. No, I don't need it. See what we've got here? We leave a few. See these and these and this. We leave some interior shoot growth so that the sun doesn't hit all of this base here. And you notice there's some right here. Now look at the trunk on this thing. This is the humongous. This is a white peach. It's a galactica. It's a pintu. A pintu is a donut peach. Some of you have seen these before. The only problem with this is it's not as tough against diseases, and the bottom of the fruit tends to crack open. So I can get about 50 to 60% off of this tree, and the only reason I keep it is it fruits so much, and people like that fruit. It has an excellent flavor, and it's white. It's a white pintu. And you can see, it is just wrapped up with flower bulbs. But this is what I was talking about on cutting it. You see this right here? This was sprayed. This was cut. It was sprayed. It was treated several times. I've got a little shoot coming out here that's loaded with fruit. But I wanted to take, this little tree here was suffering because this one was taking all the energy away from this site. And these are all on trickle irrigation. But this branch is perfect. So is this one. So is this one. But I had a void right here. So I kept working with it, and this will fill the void. It will start branching, and it makes a perfect tree. So this is the original, and I've reached that point where I can take it out. This is the original top of that tree when I planted it. This was the top of the tree. And it's branched just like you see here. Normally I'd have this branch coming over here. But this is a freestone, and it's called July Prince. That's one of the best. And you can see on it, you've got a central bud on that bud where the node is. Then you got a flower bud on either side. That's typical peach, typical nectarine. Remember the two trees I told you that were cherries that were, you need to see what they look like? Take a look at these. These are bacterial cankers. Bacterial cankers, there's still possibly a little piece on it, but this is, these are our pheromone traps. This whole property, this mimics the female moth, and this is for peach tree borer attacking the tree. They'll start in May and June, and we buy these come in a 300 pack count, and it lasts all year long. So we'll be putting some new ones on this year, and what it does is it sends out a pheromone of the female so that when the male flies come in here to mate with the females, and then they start laying eggs right at the base of the tree, the males can't find the females because the whole area smells like females.
What is that again?
This is a pheromone that we buy this from the Blount County Co-op, and we keep them in a refrigerator. They'll last a year or two. Now, I had one on display over there, but the one I had on display, which is a pheromone, is to let you know when that insect is active. Then you have to go in and spray. This keeps the insects away so that we don't have to spray. So that's the reason we're using these, and we'll use them again this year. Last year was the first year. But somebody said, well, what? Well, I wish, Sue, I wish they were available, but so far they haven't done that. But this one is actually still emitting a pheromone, and what I like about it is it not only tells you, if you want to check on it and when you see activity, but it also prevents any of that. They have about 60 acres of peaches over here. We've got about 30 acres of cleared land, so we cover the whole area on both sides. And it's better if you work together. That way the males on this side can't find a home over here, and the ones over here can't find a home over there. So.
What was your question?
All we do is I just send a young lady, one of our workers, through, and they'll put on every tree in an orchard gets one.
Just one.
That's right.
Which moth was that for?
And that's the peach tree borer.
Oh, that's tall kills bees.
Yeah. All right. Here's I want you to look. Do you see the bees? Now, y'all are welcome to walk on the other side if you want to take a look at the bees. They're pretty active. But
It's about 50.
we had a gentleman that provided us honeybees for a good while, and things kind of went a different direction. So we now have a new individual that wants to come in, and they put their bees in here. So they make, we frequently take their honey and put our name on it, and then we sell it as petals honey. Now, my concern is when Leo comes right along here and he's spraying, now on a day like today, he wouldn't get any on this. But if the wind's blowing strong, I don't see how he can prevent it. But, I'm letting Jason and the owner hash that out. I told him I would put them a little further down. But I've walked all around on it. Anybody know, you sharp on ornamentals, what is the plant over there with flowers?
Winter honeysuckle.
That's right. Very good. That's the winter honeysuckle. And the bees love it. Now, this is Uncle James.
Well, look at that fancy engraving on them bee boxes right there.
Plug. This one ripens at the end of July, and that's the reason I like it. Most of our plums ripen early. I wanted some that would continue with that Japanese flavor all the way, and this one ripens at that time frame. But the problem is, it's no better than the next one, which is Morris, the Texas A&M plum, or the last one, which is Nursery, which is kind of the granddaughter of all these plums out here. They'll all freeze if the wrong hits them, if it hits them at the wrong time.
What was the name of this one? The name of this one?
This one is Uncle James. I have to special bud it. I did have Vaughn Nursery budding them for us, and then Vaughn Nursery had some problems, so that's in Tennessee. But I believe it or not, I can't even buy out of South Carolina the rootstock Guardian that all the Tennessee nurseries use. We would have to become a nursery with that intent to bud them, bud trees. They won't sell them to a retail nursery. But you see some of these trees, this is what fools you. You see that crack? And up here and up here? The plums will do that many times, and when we start putting spray on in the spring, they got a protective barrier there, and they usually just callus over. So I don't worry about it. What do you think?
Yeah, bees, yeah. I have my bees facing my garden. So, but that, you go through and you figure stuff out, and I would move them. Because, I'm thinking the bees need to be right here where the garden is. Not that they go 3 to 6 miles. They're not even getting my stuff, My neighbors had a good garden.
These are 11 years old. You can see the trunk on them. The trunk's pretty healthy, but this bark will split just like you see it. This is the old paraderm, and then you got a new paraderm underneath it producing new bark. So usually when a plum gets about this age, they're all dead. We take a little more care of these.
But they're kind of cleaned out in the middle like the peach trees too, right?
But we're going to thin out some more of the branches. This one, but if you notice how small, this is Methley. Methley is about a 600 to 700 hour variety, which is pretty ideal for us. It comes a little bit too early. I wish it were an 8 or an 850. But these are good. These plums are, my goodness, they're good all the way down to Greenville, all the way down to Bruton, because they're not high chillers. Now, this is spring crop. The old bark on this peels away, and then you can see the new paradigm, the new bark down here. People asked me, I looked at that one time and I thought, good gracious, it's dying. It's just splitting all over the place. Well, people think that, but notice how it's rolled up right here? Mm-hmm. That's the way they grow. That's the way they look. That's typical. But, now, you're going to make this cut for me?
I will.
All right, you need to come over the other side, and I'll show you. See this?
Yes, sir.
You're going to cut it. You're going to leave a little stump right there. Give it a little slant, that's good. All right. Now, what's the one thing that you could have improved on?
Oh, I should have been over there and been a little bit smoother.
Well, what I'm talking about is when you prune something, always take your pruner and see, I'm going to leave a little stub, but don't do it with the tip of your cutter. Always grab the whole thing. It's much easier to cut it that way. The cutting point is back here. If you try to do it with just the point, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. Now she wants to do another. Now I want to do it again. Can I just cut that one off a little bit more?
No, I want you to leave that one because I like it.
It's fuzzy around the
They
edge.
can blame it on me. But now you see, again, thinking about cleaning out the center, look at these two right here.
I would look at that one.
I've already got some budwood, so I don't necessarily need all of this. So you want to take those out?
Would you do that with this size clipper or what you have in your
You do it
hand?
with this one. You need to come in from right here. Let me see that. This is called participation pruning.
And the slant is where the rainwater runs off?
That's right, exactly.
Is that too much?
No, that's all right. I can tolerate that. Yeah, you could go a little lower, but that's fine.
Our uncle just sits there and says, "No, not that one, you idiot. Go up a little bit." That's why we can't learn anything. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But as you look
And what
at that
about
tree,
this?
what's the one that we need to cut? We haven't cut yet. Right in the center.
This is
That's right. You got it. Absolutely. So you got to reach in. Now you're going to reach in with this, or you want to do it with the hand shear.
Is that big enough? I mean, will this handle that?
If you do what I was saying, in other words,
Get
when
way
you make,
in there.
when you make your cut, don't do that. Do that.
So I still have to get in the same hole?
Yep. All right, lower it down a little bit. Right there. Now, get your hands further back on your grips. Further back. There you go. There you go.
Perfect. A little ragged too.
Now,
Practice. A-minus.
now, we clean the center out. I'm going to wait and see what the next freeze does before I take the tops off. Now, why am I doing that? Because notice down here you see more bud development. Look way up here. Way up there. See that? It's the last ones to break and come out are usually all the way in the top. For that reason, I leave those and then make a decision. We can always take them out. Always remember when you cut, you can't put it back. All right, anybody got a question about
Right here on this, right.
Well, you got one there. I'll leave that one, but you got one right here that you ought to take out. See that one?
This one.
And see it's going right toward the center. And you can do it with that hand shear.
My angle is what I have a problem with.
That is a winter honeysuckle. Oh, you mean the tree?
No, well, that's what I meant, the bush.
Winter honeysuckle.
Winter honeysuckle.
Ooh,
it's delicious.
Bees love them.
This plum tree, right?
That's fine. That'll work. Yeah. Now, a lot of people...
As long as water runs
A lot
off.
of people would cut that flush. But that's what I try to tell people. Don't cut them flush. You're just opening up that whole branch to whatever's out here.
Like, has that already been cut once because of that little knot right there, and it's grown back?
Yeah, exactly. But you see it grew back and it healed over.
Right, and then this one grew out too from where it had
That's
been
right,
trimmed.
exactly. And see where those were cut?
So would you take that out then next time? I won't do it today, but
next time.
at my house.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
we've grown
yeah.
peach trees for about 12 years, and we rarely have peaches. I think my husband waits too late to spray,
Well,
and then they kind of rot.
That could contribute to it. Let's go up to the Asian pears and the figs right here, and that'll kind of wind us down. And then we can let y'all walk around anywhere you're going to go.
Let me carry the head.
We go over the bridge.
Sure, the bridge is perfectly good to walk over. Absolutely.
When do you start cleaning things?
Just look at where I am right here. If this were the tree that I was planting, all you do on a little tree, remember those little trees I told you we just got out of Tennessee? All you want to do is come in here and cut it right there. You got 3 nice branches, you got some more developing here. That's all you're going to do. Nothing else. You let it grow.
Put it where?
One cut. Right there.
The whole thing.
You're taking out the leader. I'm trying to make the growth come from down here.
How far?
In other words, right here, if you look at that, I normally would cut All right, there is 19. I normally would cut these at 24, and you see what's happening. I cut it at 22 right there. That's where I'd cut it, right there. And on that tree, I'd let it grow and grow and grow. And the only thing I'd do is fertilize it if it needed to be weeded or general care.
Now that's stone fruits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, this is spring, this is satin plum cotton. It's the same one that we just pruned on, the same one you pruned. Okay, again, all you got to do is to cut this. If you want branches for an open center tree. Now that's what I'm shooting for.
Because it's so high, you can do it here.
That one you can let go as is, unless you want it. You see, this one, you've already got the branches. So what you do on these, you got to balance these two with these two. So you simply come in here and you simply cut these off, just like that. You want them the same, about the same way, and that way when you do that, you can walk away from it and you're through with it for a good while. The first year you can just let peaches grow, but you've got to give them a little guidance.
Later on, it'll have stuff that'll come in.
This is an Indian-free level. The reason, see, in order to make this one dovetail back into a normal deal, I'd have to cut it right there. Now, I could cut it there, but Jason has already got it potted up as a big plant. So I'm going to see how many of these will force out, and then I'll make a decision on that.
This one is split right here, too.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah.
And then up here, too.
That's a mechanical damage.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not disease.
Okay.
Somebody stripped it there. It's callousing back over.
That wasn't me.
Wasn't
me either.
Wasn't me. Dr. Powell, on this pea prepare, would you take this one out, leave these two, and then use this one?
On this?
Which one? How would you do this one? Oh, you take that. Okay, keep it up to the top. Okay. Oh, and that one too. Okay. And now what about this one? Will we keep this one?
I'm going to keep it because I don't have anything coming out this way.
Okay.
This one's coming this way.
Thank you for pruning this tree. I think I'm about to buy it. And I wanted to make sure I thought pruned it right. So, yeah, I went ahead and picked out an Orient earlier. It's like, yeah, I'm just like,
If
this
she's
one,
gonna
it
buy
looks so
maybe,
good.
Maybe I should cut another one.
A little extra charge for pruning.
Okay, so
Thank
let's
you
cross
very
the bridge and I'll show you these trees right here.
Okay, so I got it all up. All right,
These
well,
are
look at
early
that one.
apples.
Yeah. I got
Anna,
a orange one that I like
Leslie,
down there,
probably
and
just
I'll have
go-
it off there. Put 'em
Those are the
on.
ones that would do fine further south. All right, let's cross right here. What I said about rhizomas plants, look at the shoots that are coming up right here. That's coming from underground roots or underground stolons. A stolon is just a stem that grows instead of a root. And we simply come in here. Those of you remember
Can you do that with the big whoppers?
Yeah. Where is my helper? Okay.
Lump that off.
Cut this one. Down at the base. This is one of the reasons I don't like this rootstock. You see those? A bull couldn't even run through that. It'd be hurt so bad. But you would think those are thorns. But look at the end of them. There's a bud. It's a branch. But that's the way they grow. And that place, that's typical. But it's taking energy away from this tree, and that's what we don't want.
Are those pear trees, Dr. Powell?
The what?
Are these pear trees?
Yes,
Okay.
these are the Asian pears. There's 9 of them. I've lost 2 on the end. I'm fixing to replace them with 2 Europeans, Ayers and Warren. But what you've got is this one spurs up much faster. This is Shinko, and it's capable of producing 200, 250 pounds. This is Korean giant. Okay, that is a replant Korean giant. And all of those, the reason these haven't been cut out is I haven't had a chance to get out here and see and save this budwood. All this is budwood.
You cut that off and use it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, look how these are spurred up. Here's your spurring right here. Look at all that. I mean, that's beautiful. That's what you want. Look at this one. That's perfect. Then you need to get some
Now,
of
do
this.
you leave this touching this one? Would you leave it on touching
Nope.
that one and take it out?
Separate all branches. You want hair moving and sun here. That's right. This is the functional one coming off of here.
Okay.
And what you want is to cut this one off here, coming into here, and let it continue to come
out that way. Okay. What about this? This straight up like that?
All right. You want it. You're going to cut it so that it's below the wire. In other words, what you want is you want to get rid of that one, and you want to get rid of this one. You want to keep this one. Cut it there. That way you're below the wire because you're not going to interfere with the branches in the next layer.
Now, do you keep it like in that 1 meter range that you did the apples, or how
Yes,
far out?
same way, same way. And you see some of these are way out of 3 feet.
That's what I was asking.
That's because when I get my pruners out here, they run from me.
Is this a
But
Korean?
you don't cut this stuff off
General?
now because you're going to use it for something else. So you don't want to drop it on the ground.
That's right.
And then try to use it.
She caught me on this, so I can show her. This is a new tree. You notice the 3 feet here? This is perfect. This will all be cut off. Notice that one's cut right there. And if you don't cut them off, this is what they do. All the way down, and some of them will just break off. But look at what I'm telling you. And see, we will cut all this back. This stuff right here, we'll leave. Here's your wire.
Pointers.
Yeah. Here is your wire right here. And we will cut this one right there. Yeah. That's about 1 foot to 1.5 foot above the wire. Anything above the wire, see this one right here? That one will be cut right where it starts to divide.
Oh, yeah.
We won't let anything get any taller than that, because all of my ladders would reach there.
So is this on a different rootstock since it's not producing those?
That's on
plants?
Caleriana.
Okay, and this one is
The
what?
first one over there is on Betchifolia. Betchifolia is one they use up around New York and Cornell and the northeast part of the country. And when you go west, they'll also use Caleriana quite a bit. And this is Caleriana.
Okay.
But you notice the rootstock here. Here's your rootstock, and here is your silent variety starting right there. Once they've been there a while, and see that one's 7 years. It's in its 7th season, but it's big enough now to carry 100 to 150 pounds of fruit. But you notice how much more spurring you get on Shinko. Shinko was the first tree. These two are Korean giant. This is Shinko. Look at the spurring you get on Shinko. Now what does that do? That makes it semi-dwarf. It doesn't grow as fast. It's a little bit easier to manage. The hardest one to manage is Korean giant, or what we call Olympic, because it just takes off growing. And we cut way back. Pears are so vigorous, these won't get 1 pound of nitrogen a year. They'll get about 1/2 pound. That's not much. All the pears here will get between 1/2 pound and 1 pound, depending on what they did last year.
Oh, okay.
And that's pure nitrogen. Anybody?
I'm sorry. I see some storm damage.
Okay.
Like right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right
Can
there.
you reach that?
Oh, you want me to cut it?
Oh, sure. Listen, I got somebody out here helping.
I'm taller than you. Let me do it.
You're left-handed.
So, back, all the way down.
Either way, you could go either way. You could cut it there, or you could go up and save that little spur that's going.
Oh yeah, I see.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay.
But your clipper's way on there.
Now push. There you go. Push that clipper as far as you can push it. There you go. Now you're getting better. There you go.
Get out of there.
And then so you could just cut that one off where it's broken.
You
And
bet.
Where the
But as you look at these trees, you see the opening here between this layer of branches? See the opening up here between the next layer? See how this opens up here? We'll go in here and we'll continue to take branches out to keep it open. And that works out quite well. You got two nice ones here, you got two nice ones here, and up here. Now this is the interesting one. This is one that came in and I planted, and I went to a lot of trouble. This is the typical Korean giant. Look at the size of that tree. I could build a boat off some of that wood on the top of it. See this one? Right here. This was a hard pear that nobody could eat. And I wanted a Hosui. And this is Hosui. But you see my bud? I simply took the old branch off of the sorry hard pear.
Oh, yeah.
It was bad that nobody could eat. And I budded it right there. So then I forced my bud. I budded it right there. Then I forced this one. I budded this one right here.
Wow.
So that's called top working a tree. So rather than me taking the tree out and wasting that many years, I simply rebudded it and converted it into a really good Hosui pear.
Love it.
And so how big was it when you did that?
How big was it?
How big were the limbs? Like, are you talking about you cut a piece of limb off and stuck it in there? Is that what you're talking
No, I
about?
budded it.
With a
Well, bud means I'm going to take a bud off of this.
Oh, like you showed a while ago.
Like I
the
showed a
little
while
bitty
ago.
one.
Rather than grafting it, I budded it because it was easier to
But
do.
how big was this when you did
Oh,
that?
it was about this size. It was, I budded it. It was about a half to an inch to an inch. And you can bud that. Now, anything much bigger than that, you've almost got graft.
Right. Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Absolutely. That is correct.
You have to, if you bud it, do you do it when it's cold? Because what you talked about before was putting it in the refrigerator. So when
Well,
you did this, was it?
I budded this one in May. In other words, I bud it in spring if I can. On a live tree like this, you bud it in spring, and by the end of that year, you've already got pretty good growth on your new bud. And the following year, believe it or not, you may even have a few flowers on the new one.
But your bud you had to get out of the refrigerator though, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right, because at that time of year, I had to go into the cooler because we were well past the north. Usually we're through budding by April. We bud March, April. Then in the fall, we bud mostly September.
So you get your bud wood and keep it in the cooler, and then you do the budding in the spring.
That's right. Absolutely. We've done that with all the apples over there. Sue took budwood off all those apples. It's all in bags marked with damp paper toweling, and we keep it in that cooler at about 35 degrees. And I could keep it a year if I had to.
Then you go out to the tree and put it onto the tree. Do you tape it with some green tape stuff?
Well, you could use green tape for budding tape, but we use what's called buddy tape.
Oh.
And if you get online and just type in buddy tape for budding, it'll take you straight to several sources. Okay, let me show you some sorry looking figs after the tree.
Oh yeah, one of my fig trees is just the one dead branch up in the middle.
Oh.
But it's got stuff growing around it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. These two rows are LSU purple. And LSU purple, I've already mentioned to you, it's not the sweetest of the bunch, but it's pretty darn good. And it's got shelf life. So when when we take them in, we deliver to restaurants, and we take them to the farmer's market, Pepper Place, farmer's market. And actually, of all the fruit that we take into restaurants, the fig may be the most popular because they do so many things with it. But you see this?
Have a loose tooth.
But you notice I didn't take it out early. I let it rot in place. Big difference. You see this one coming up? You see this one? And if I need to, I'll pull it back like that. And see, this one has still got enough life in it. I can cut it off here and use this one to pull it back and tie it to this one. Notice this is with an old hose. This is my 100-pound blackberry wire that I use. And I simply put it, now, this one's gone now. Now, it's still got some strength, so I can use it if I need to. But look at this one. Now, this one is falling over. This is perfect here. And notice this one is bracing against this one. So what I'm suggesting to you, although it looks a little haggard, there is a way to rejuvenate and cut. Keep in mind, those aren't branches, those are trunks. They're coming from the base of the plant. So, see how these lean out that way? Well, we left all three of them. We'll take the one that we like the best. And I'll start out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll usually start with 6 or 8. And we'll put them in a training mode. See, this one's got up to where it's already branched. And we, in another year, you wouldn't recognize this plant. But if you don't do something of this nature with it, it can just continue to sit here and look pretty haggard and not do very much. And I'll hit these with calcium nitrate. Once we get past when we feel like winter's over. But I'm not about to cut any figs until the last half of March when they have begun to break bud. This right here will tell you, it's still black. That's a scale leaf. When that scale leaf suddenly pops off, it's fixing to break bud. When it starts breaking bud, then you can prune the plant without causing it to become susceptible to more damage should you have a late freeze.
Not dead till it's wrong.
That's right, exactly.
So figs, you wait until they break bud to prune?
Normally, and I've monitored these things for some time, irregardless of variety, almost all of them will start breaking bud about the 16th of March.
So you wait until then, instead of, say, like with the fruit trees, like the apple and whatever, now's a good time to prune. These you wait until they break bud? You got it. This is a totally different animal. You treat this one differently. Otherwise, if I go in here right now and cut this, and we have another 25-degree freeze, it'll kill everything I've got left.
How long ago did those big ones get cut back that you have there?
About 3 years.
Okay.
What do? We fruit them. You say, well, yes, we did. We fruited that one 2 years before it started going down, and I used it as a brace to get these others. So if it's got enough life in it to produce enough branches, I leave it and fruit it. Then I keep the same trunk over here and try to use it as pulling up. See, that part of that trunk right there is still good. We will eventually go to all this size individual trunks, but I'm not going to cut this out. I will either pull this one up like that, or I'll take this one and we'll settle for it.
But you're not going to cut this out. Why not?
I'm not cutting it out till I make sure we're past the freeze period.
Okay, but it will come out when you prune this bush because it's crossed over.
These 1, 2, 3, I'll keep one.
Out of those 3, okay.
That is absolutely correct. And see, I've still got a little void right here. But what I find out is after about leaving 6 to 8 of these, I've had a lot more success in going to either somewhere between 3 and 5 trunks. And it depends on the plant. If the plant gives me 5 good trunks, we keep it. This is my winner. This is a north. This is the southeast side of this tree. I keep it wider open than any of the rest. Because I can walk into it, I can prune it, I can pick it. If you let all this canopy developing in here, you could stick your head in there and you couldn't even find the figs. So you've got to have a window to give you a little help.
What do you do about the wasp?
Eat them.
The wasp. Well,
because they're like little turrets on top of those figs, you know.
Oh yes. Well, I got several ways I handle that. I use an organic spray, but that's what I used to use. In the organic spray, we got two insects: the African fig fly, which we have, and the other standard fig flies that lay eggs in the osteole or the eye of the fig. And those are really, really bad, but and that includes the Asians, that includes the one that gets blackberries and blueberries. It's the same insect, and we use kill traps.
Okay.
This whole area is covered in kill traps.
That's those little things we saw hanging?
Yes.
Kill
I have a student that works these all summer long, and I've got some other people that work. They're fermentation. The insect is drawn into the fermentation, that acetic acid, that vinegar type smell. And I've done this for 5 straight years. And what it means is I don't have to spray these with an insecticide. That helps a great deal.
I'm talking about the wasps that sit on top of the figs and they watch you. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to get that. Oh, well, I'll go over here.
They can be bad, absolutely.
So the kill traps, that's what they go?
I run about 50 kill traps, and I surround this whole area all the way.
Because they're pollinating that fig. And then guarding it.
Yeah, they feel like they are, but figs that we grow are common figs. They don't require pollination.
Okay, at all.
No, not whatsoever. We have Black Mission over there in one of those rows. Black Mission, the same one that they ship out of California to our stores. It's common. It's a common fig. It's not a St. Pedro or some of those that go in California. It's a second type that produces pollen. Ours are not like that. If you take the figs that we grow here, open the fig up, take what you think is the seed, crack it open, it's hollow. That's the seed. And there are no seeds because what you're eating is a stem. And this is a totally different animal, and that's the reason it's got so many different parts. But it is the most vulnerable of all of our tree fruits to damage. If we have damage on peaches and plums and pears and apples, it's to the flowers and the fruit. It's not to the tree. With figs, it's to the tree as well as possibly fruit.
So, well, my takeaway is I hear all the time, I can't grow figs, I can't grow figs. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. And what they're doing is they're pruning too soon and then giving up and not letting the tree recover.
That's probably right. Yes, absolutely. But if you'll wait to start cutting on these, if you wait until the last half of March and time it, but let me show you while we're here. They also have first crop figs. This is a first crop fig right there. See that little one right there? Can you see that? There's one right there. All right. That makes a fig on old wood. Most figs are produced on new wood. That is, new flushes that are occurring in the spring. Well, but this one is different. It actually, and that's the first thing, you can always check those, that gets killed. That's the first thing on this fig tree that goes down. Once those are all dead, you won't see me. But we've got 2 varieties that managed to bring some of these special type early fig fruit through. But This is not one of them. LSU purple, usually most all of those early figs get killed.
So you're saying these little nubs there?
Yes.
The first.
That's it. That's exactly right.
The kill traps, do you sell those here, or are they sold, and we can get them anywhere, or where did kill traps come from?
You see that? That's your new fruit. The answer to your question is we tried, but we couldn't get anybody to take them.
The kill traps?
Yeah.
Wasn't a seller, so.
We probably put too high price on them. I think we put $4 or $5 on them.
Oh, okay.
But you
Because
could
I have fig trees I want to protect it.
you could ring your entire planting with kill traps.
Okay, thank you.
If
Because
you
I
wanted
have
to
the
go to trouble.
blueberries.
We use
and
Michigan State
blackberries.
University's their mix for fermentation. And I've got a whiskey bottle over there that the girls use.
So you just make the kill traps yourself?
Oh.
Oh yes,
Okay.
we make them new every year. And the biggest problem I have, believe it or not, and I saw this take place about 8 or 9 years ago at a meeting in Savannah, Georgia, where this class went out and they were using kill traps, and they worked pretty darn good. And this German lady was making these and selling them, and dang it, she moved back to Germany. Well, there was no source on them, so I had to come up with a source. So the first thing I found was nobody sells cups and lids except online. And the only place I finally found them was at a party store. And at a party store where little kids drink, they do have caps that fit on the top of it. Because without the cap on it, everything gets in it. You have to control it. But anyway, I figured that out, and we've solved that problem.
Okay.
You said you use the University of Michigan's.
I use the university. You can get online and just pull it
Michigan
up real
State.
easy.
Okay, Michigan State though.
Well, tell Jason to put your YouTube in and you get out there and make it.
You're trying to control what's called the spotted winged Drosophila. It is a vinegar fly. Okay, and vinegar flies like vinegar. and the African fig fly is also a vinegar fly, but that's what hits this. It is the spotted winged Drosophila and the African fig fly, and I could spray to control it. But when I use the kill traps, I don't have to.
So just make a little something to hold vinegar to attract it?
You make it sound simple.
Yeah, I have vinegar for you.
Now, don't
Come on here.
you understand that the scientists have to look at it from a scientific standpoint, and they got to know what the pH is and the criticality and all of this stuff. I've worn out at least 4 student workers on kill traps, and I bring one in while I still got this one, and she helps train this one. So when she leaves, I still got one. But it's not difficult to do. We set up in the barn in our kitchen, and then I've got another place where they set up, and they've got a whiskey bottle, and they've designed that whiskey bottle to hold just the quantity they needed to like refill 10 cups. And it works perfect. And then they discard the bad stuff, but not right where that kill trap is. They take it elsewhere.
Okay.
Because then it disintegrates in a hurry. But oh my goodness, it works like a dream.
Okay. Thank you.
We have counted.
What do you ferment with the vinegar?
Well, we use sugar. We use yeast. And let's see, sugar and yeast and 12 ounces of water and 2 drops of soap. When the fly hits the water, if there's soap in that water, the fly can't get out. But if there's no soap in there, he grabs it.
Okay.
I mean, it just lets them go.
Okay.
People,
So there's no
you've been brave.
vinegar.
It's been awesome. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
So no vinegar?